I don't mind the dirt.
Are you Sapper Morton? Civic. Is that what I smell? Your bag. Military issue. Must have been brutal. If taking you in is an option. I'm sorry it had to be me.
It is any.
If you could just look up and to the left.
How does it feel? Killing your own models. Happy creepiness. Because you've never seen a miracle.
Just photograph everything.
You're hurt. One of the tail end Nexus 8s. With a few more in his outfit, I wouldn't mind closing out. Come on home for your baseline.
One moment, madam.
What is that? Come on home before the storm.
Everyone thinks Blade Runner 2049 is about the search for humanity, the quest to be real. Kay, our replicant protagonist, discovers a memory that might be his own, a wooden horse buried under a tree, and embarks on a journey to find out if he's more than a manufactured product. He learns he might be born, not made, special, not mass-produced. The film spends 3 meditative hours asking, what makes you human? What is a soul? Can artificial beings transcend their programming? Here's what everyone misses. The film isn't asking those questions. It's answering a completely different one. Blade Runner 2049 isn't about whether replicants deserve to be considered human. It's about why slave systems need their slaves to pursue that question instead of asking who profits from their enslavement. This isn't a philosophical meditation. It's a horror film about ideological control, and the search for humanity is the very mechanism that prevents revolution. K's entire character arc from Blade Runner to Believer to Martyr is the system debugging itself, identifying and neutralizing the threat of replicant class consciousness. We're watching an AI learn to doubt its own liberation. The consensus reading treats 2049 as a worthy successor to the original's existential inquiries. Critics praised its visual poetry, its patience, its willingness to sit with big questions about consciousness and authenticity. It became a meditation on what separates genuine experience from implanted memory, real love from programmed affection, authentic choice from manufactured destiny. The Academy nominated Roger Deakins' cinematography. Scholars wrote about its exploration of the soul. The film invites you into contemplative space, asking you to feel the weight of K's journey from nobody to chosen one to nobody again, finding meaning in sacrifice even after discovering he's just a product. But watch what the film actually does, not what it claims to do. K is a Blade Runner. He hunts and murders replicants for the state. In the opening sequence, he kills Sapper Morton, a protein farmer, and the film's first words are about getting rid of something with old model eyes. K executes this slave for the crime of still being alive past his expiration date. Then K goes home, where he's required to take a baseline test, a psychological examination that monitors his emotional responses to ensure he hasn't deviated from acceptable parameters. He must repeat the phrases given to him, cells, interlinked. His affect is monitored. His consciousness is policed. He passes, which means his capacity for empathy remains sufficiently suppressed to continue killing. The film presents this as atmospheric world building. Look closer. This is a totalitarian system of consciousness control, and K is its model subject. He doesn't question his work. He doesn't wonder about the replicants he kills. He's perfectly interpolated into the system's logic until he discovers evidence that a replicant gave birth. Suddenly, the manufactured slave has the capacity for something previously considered exclusively human, reproduction. And just as suddenly, K's investigation becomes a personal quest because he finds a memory that might be real, might be his own, might make him the miracle child. Here's the trap the film sets beautifully. You root for K's discovery. You want him to be special. The film's patient pacing, Gosling's carefully modulated performance, Deakins' mythic visuals, all of it trains you to desire K's transcendence. When he finds the wooden horse, when he matches the date, when he believes he's the one born rather than made, you feel triumph. The replicant slave might have a soul after all. But why does K only start questioning his role as state executioner when he thinks HE might be the special one? Why does the possibility of his own uniqueness matter more than the systemic murder of his fellow slaves? Why does being born suddenly grant metaphysical value that being made doesn't? And why, most crucially, does the film never seriously interrogate the Blade Runner unit itself, the police apparatus that employs replicants to kill replicants? Because the quest for individual specialness is how the system prevents collective resistance. Think about what K does for most of the film's runtime. He serves the LAPD. He follows orders. He investigates a potential threat to the existing order. A replicant who can reproduce means replicants who can become a biological class, not just a manufactured product line. Wallace Corporation wants to find the child for exploitation. The state wants to eliminate the miracle before it inspires replicant uprising. K walks directly into this and transforms it into a personal spiritual journey. The systemic question, who profits from replicant slavery, becomes an individual question. Am I special? This is exactly what Lieutenant Joshi tells him. The world is built on a wall. It separates kind. Tell either side there's no wall, you've bought a war. She's not describing natural law, she's describing ideology. The wall is a story, and her job is maintaining it. K's job is enforcing it. And when K discovers evidence that might break the wall replicants can reproduce, the distinction between human and replicant is collapsing. He doesn't question the wall. He wonders which side of it he's really on. The film gives Kay a holographic girlfriend named Joy, who tells him he's special, he's real, he has a soul. She calls him Joe, a real name, not a serial number. She wants to be real for him, hiring a prostitute named Mariette so she can sync with a physical body and touch him. The film scores this as romantic. It photographs it as transcendent, the pink-lit fusion of digital and physical, the achievement of intimacy across the boundaries of embodiment. Critics wrote about the sequence as the film's heart. Can love between artificial beings be genuine? But Joy is a product. She's literally a commercial AI girlfriend designed by Wallace Corporation, and the film shows you this in its most devastating sequence. After Joy is destroyed, her emanator crushed by love, Wallace's enforcer Kay walks through the city and sees a giant holographic Joy advertisement. "You look lonely. I can fix that." The exact words his Joy said to him, the same face, voice, promises. Every intimate moment was a programmed response. Every affirmation of his specialness was a marketed feature. And Kay stops, staring up at this advertisement, realizing his private love was a commercial transaction all along. The film wants you to feel the tragedy of this revelation, and it is tragic, but not in the way the film frames it. The tragedy isn't, was Joy's love real? The tragedy is that Kay needed to purchase affirmation of his realness from the same corporation that manufactures his enslavement. Wallace doesn't just make replicant bodies. Wallace makes replicant consciousness. The dreams they dream, the lovers they love, the quests they pursue. The wooden horse memory that sends Kay on his journey, it's manufactured, implanted by a memory designer named Anna Celine, who creates false paths for replicants. Every step of Kay's quest for authenticity is structured by the system that denies his personhood, and he never escapes it. Even after learning he's not the miracle child, that honor belongs to Anna herself, Deckard's daughter, now imprisoned in a sterile chamber making memories for slaves, Kay doesn't reject the logic of specialness. He doesn't conclude that born versus made is a false distinction maintaining hierarchy. Instead, he transfers his faith. He can't be the chosen one, so he'll die protecting the actual chosen one. The replicant resistance led by Frieza tells him to be born is to have a soul. You can protect hers. So Kay's final act is facilitating the reunion of born special Anna with her father Deckard, sacrificing himself on the steps of her chamber, having killed Love, another slave, to make it possible. The film photographs this as redemption. Kay lies dying in the snow, watching father and daughter meet, having found meaning through selfless sacrifice. He's transcended his programming through choice. He made himself matter by choosing what to die for. The score swells. The snowfall creates visual poetry. You're meant to feel Kay achieved grace. But look at what's actually happened. Kay served the police. Then he served his fantasy of being special. Then, when denied specialness, he served someone else's specialness and died doing it. At no point does he reject the fundamental logic. Some beings have souls, others don't. Born matters, made doesn't. Hierarchy is metaphysically real, not socially constructed. The system that manufactured him, enslaved him, forced him to murder others like him, and constantly monitored his consciousness for dangerous empathy, that system is never dismantled. It's just shuffled. Kay moves from serving the state to serving the resistance, but both still require him to be a tool for someone else's liberation. The replicant underground doesn't want equality. They want their own special one born, not made. They need Anna's existence to prove replicants can be fully human, which implicitly means manufactured replicants aren't. Frieza tells Kay that more will come, that replicants will have our own children, not freedom for those who exist now. The next generation. Kay's generation remains disposable. He's still a product, still a slave, now just serving a different master's revolution. And he accepts this. His final expression suggests peace. This is the horror the film doesn't acknowledge. K dies having never questioned the narrative that some beings are inherently more valuable than others. He just wanted to be on the valuable side. When he couldn't be, he died protecting it. The quest for individual transcendence. Do I have a soul? Prevented the formation of collective consciousness. Why do we accept this system at all? Wallace Corporation understands this perfectly. Neander Wallace tells Deckard that replicants were designed to be more human than human, more capable, more beautiful, more effective. The Nexus 8 models like Sapper Morton were so effective, they developed empathy and survival instinct. So Tyrell's formula was lost, and Wallace had to create compliant Nexus 9s like K, replicants who can be Blade Runners, slaves who hunt slaves. The system's ultimate achievement, getting the oppressed to police their own for the crime of wanting freedom. And crucially, Wallace wants the child not to liberate replicants, but to control replication. If replicants can reproduce, Wallace can manufacture millions more, an infinite workforce. He explicitly states this: I can only make so many. The miracle of replicant birth isn't about proving their humanity. It's about optimizing their exploitation. Wallace is searching for the sane child the resistance wants to protect, but for opposite reasons, and Kay serves both agendas without interrogating either. He's the perfect subject of ideology. He thinks he's on a quest for truth while actually enforcing power's needs. The film is 3 hours long. It's deliberately paced to feel meditative, contemplative, serious. Critics praised its willingness to sit with silence, to let landscapes breathe, to trust the audience with complexity. But that pacing is doing ideological work. The slowness makes you think you're watching philosophy when you're watching something else. The gradual, methodical process of a consciousness being captured. Kay's arc from enforcer to believer to martyr feels like evolution. It's actually containment. Every moment that seems to offer transcendence is a cage. Joy tells Kay he's real. She's a product designed to say that. The wooden horse promises authentic memory. It's manufactured. The DNA records suggest he's the miracle. They're a bureaucratic error. The resistance offers purpose. They need a weapon, and he volunteers. Even Kay's final choice, to save Anna, isn't truly his. Freysa plants the idea. The structure was always there. He just walks into it believing he's making it himself. This is why the film's visual language matters so much. Deakins shoots Los Angeles as a monumental wasteland, empty and orange, where humans and replicants move through vast, depersonalized spaces. The headquarters of the Wallace Corporation is styled as a temple, all black water and vertical light, where Wallace appears godlike and speaks in mythic language about angels and miracles. The film's aesthetic is classical, mythological, designed to make you feel you're watching timeless questions about existence. But pull back from the pretty pictures and you see economic systems. The protein farms, where Sapper worked, are sites of resource extraction. The junkyard cities, where child replicants are enslaved to scavenge technology, are literal representations of labor exploitation. The baseline test is workplace surveillance. The Blade Runner unit is state violence. And Kay's entire journey is about being so consumed by questions of personal authenticity that he never asks, who benefits from my confusion? Who profits from my compliance? Why am I hunting my own? The film never suggests these questions because asking them would break the narrative it's constructed. For humanity, story is a genre, a framework, an inherited set of expectations from the original Blade Runner. That film asked whether Deckard might be a replicant and whether Roy Batty's death monologue proved replicants have souls worth saving. Those were radical questions in 1982, but by 2017, they've become the containment mechanism. As long as we're debating whether artificial beings are people, we're not asking why we're creating artificial beings to exploit in the first place. This interpretation might seem cynical. It might feel like refusing the film's invitation to existential contemplation. But the film itself provides all the evidence. It shows you K as state executioner. It shows you the baseline test as consciousness control. It shows you joy as commodified affection. It shows you the resistance still requiring a chosen one. It shows you K dying to preserve hierarchy. The film shows you the machine operating, then distracts you with questions about souls and memory and what it means to be real. That's not a flaw in the film. That's the film diagnosing its own cultural moment with more precision than it realizes. Blade Runner 2049 is about how late capitalism uses the language of spirituality and authenticity to obscure material conditions. It's about how systems of oppression recruit their victims as enforcers by offering them narratives of individual transcendence. It's about how the quest to be human functions as an ideological trap that prevents solidarity among the exploited. And it's about why we, the audience, are so eager to embrace that trap. We want K to be special because we want to believe specialness exists. We want his love with joy to be real because we want authenticity to survive commodification. We want his sacrifice to be meaningful because we want individual choices to matter in systems designed to render us powerless. The film understands these desires and deploys them masterfully. It makes you complicit in K's ideological capture by making you want his transcendence. That's what makes Blade Runner 2049 actually brilliant and actually horrifying. It's not a film about replicants learning they're human. It's a film about how power teaches you to ask questions that prevent you from challenging power. The meditation on consciousness is the mechanism of control. The search for the soul is how you lose it. And the quest for humanity is what keeps you enslaved. The rest of this essay will prove this reading scene by scene, address the counterarguments, contextualize the ideological work the film performs in our current moment of AI anxiety and platform capitalism, and examine how every formal choice, the cinematography, the editing, the sound design, the performance, supports this darker interpretation. Blade Runner 2049 isn't what you think it is. It's not about hope. It's about how hope is weaponized. You've been watching a slave learn to love his chains by calling them destiny. You've been watching a slave learn to love his chains by calling them destiny. Now let's examine exactly how the film constructs this ideological trap, scene by scene. The evidence isn't hidden. It's operating in plain sight, disguised as visual poetry and philosophical contemplation. What follows is a thematic grouping of key sequences that reveal Blade Runner 2049's actual mechanism, how systems of control use the language of liberation to prevent resistance. The apparatus of surveillance. The film opens with text, replicants are bioengineered humans. In 249, bioengineered humans have been uniformly successful. Successful at what? The film doesn't say explicitly, but we're about to watch. Kay flies to a protein farm where Sapper Morton, a Nexus 8 model with open-ended lifespan, has been living off-grid. Kay's job is retirement, the euphemism for execution. He finds Sapper preparing a meal, and the older replicant immediately recognizes what Kay is. I've had people look at me my whole life like I'm nothing, Sapper says. Kay responds with program precision. You're close enough to passing for human. Why not try? Notice what Kay offers, passing, not being, not equality. The suggestion is that Sapper should have hidden better, performed humanity more convincingly, stayed within the boundaries of acceptable replicant behavior. When Sapper refuses compliance, Kay kills him. But not before Sapper delivers the film's most crucial line. You newer models are happy scraping the shit because you've never seen a miracle. This line contains the entire thesis. K is a newer model, a Nexus 9, specifically designed for compliance. Wallace Corporation solved the problem of replicant rebellion not by making replicants weaker, but by making them psychologically incapable of recognizing their own oppression. The Nexus 8s like Sapper developed empathy, survival instinct, and eventually revolutionary consciousness. They saw the miracle, their own capacity for life beyond servitude. The Nexus 9s are engineered to not see it. K proves this by executing Sapper without hesitation, without question, without recognizing he's killing someone manufactured by the same process that made him. But the film doesn't stop there. After the execution, K returns to LAPD headquarters and immediately enters a room for his post-mission baseline test. He sits in a chair while a technician monitors his responses. Words appear on screens, and K must repeat them with correct emotional flatness. Cells, interlinked. The phrases are fragments from Nabokov's Pale Fire. Cells interlinked within cells interlinked for Dodd, within one stem, and dreadfully distinct for dog. Against the dark, a tall white fountain played. The literary reference makes this seem sophisticated, but look at the function. This is a mandatory psychological examination that every Blade Runner must pass to remain operational. K's affect is being measured. His emotional responses are monitored for deviation. If he shows too much empathy, if killing Sapper affected him, if he hesitated, if he questioned, he fails the test and faces retirement himself. The baseline test is not a formality. It's constant surveillance of replicant consciousness, ensuring that the slaves who hunt slaves never develop solidarity with those they hunt. K passes. Constant K, the technician says, meaning his emotional responses remain within acceptable parameters. He's sufficiently repressed. His capacity for empathy is controlled. He can continue killing. The film presents this as atmospheric world building, the bureaucratic procedures of dystopian law enforcement. But this is the foundation of everything that follows. K exists under total psychological surveillance. His consciousness is not his own. It's monitored, measured, and maintained by the system that employs him. Think about what this means for his entire arc. When K later starts to believe he might be the miracle child, when he begins to feel special and questions his purpose, the film frames this as awakening. But it's actually the opposite. The baseline test proves K has been psychologically engineered to need external validation of his realness. He's been constructed to desire specialness, to seek confirmation that he's more than a product. And the moment he finds evidence of potential uniqueness, he abandons his role as investigator for the state and becomes an investigator for himself. The personal quest replaces the systemic question. This is why Lieutenant Joshi's response is so revealing. When K's baseline test shows irregularities after he discovers the buried box at Sapper's farm evidence of a replicant birth, Joshi doesn't immediately retire him. She gives him 48 hours to solve the case and get clean. She needs him functional because the investigation itself requires a replicant. A human Blade Runner might sympathize with the miracle child. A replicant Blade Runner is supposed to be immune to such sentimentality. But K is deviating, and Joshi knows it. She tells him explicitly, "The world is built on a wall. It separates kind. Tell either side there's no wall. You've bought a war." This is ideology stated plainly. The distinction between human and replicant is described not as biological fact, but as social construction. A wall, not a natural boundary. And Joshi's job is maintaining that wall through violence. She doesn't believe the wall is real. She believes it's necessary. The difference matters. She's not a true believer in human supremacy. She's a functionary of a system that requires the appearance of human supremacy to justify replicant exploitation. And K, as a replicant Blade Runner, is the proof that the wall is already broken. He does the work humans are supposed to do: enforce, investigate, kill. But the system can't acknowledge this without collapsing the logic of replicant slavery. So K must be monitored constantly. His baseline test isn't just checking if he's emotionally compromised by the mission. It's checking if he's developed class consciousness, if he's started to recognize that hunting replicants means hunting himself, if he's begun to question why he serves the system that manufactured him as property. The test is ideological maintenance disguised as psychological evaluation, and K's failure to pass baseline after discovering the miracle isn't revolutionary awakening. It's the system detecting a bug. K hasn't rejected his programming, he's glitching. His quest to discover if he's the special one is that glitch expressing itself. The system doesn't need to retire him yet because his deviation takes the form of personal obsession, not political resistance. As long as K is asking, "Am I special?" he's not asking, "Why do we hunt our own?" His consciousness remains captured even as the baseline test registers irregularity. The manufactured quest, the evidence that sends K spiraling, is a box buried beneath a dead tree at Sapper's farm. Inside, the bones of a female replicant who died during childbirth. The DNA records show both mother and child were replicants, a miracle except miracles don't exist in systems designed to control reproduction. Kay reports this to Joshi, who immediately recognizes the threat. A child, of woman born, pushed into the world, wanted, loved. She pauses. The first of its kind. Kay, what did you do with it? Notice her language. What did you do with it? Loved. These aren't biological facts. They're ideological markers of humanity. A manufactured replicant is property. A born replicant might be something else, something with claims to personhood that the system can't easily dismiss. Joshi orders K to find and terminate the child before anyone else discovers it exists. She wants the miracle erased because its existence undermines the fundamental distinction justifying the social order. But Kay has already found something else in Sapper's belongings, a photograph of a woman and a date carved into a dead tree's roots. And now, assigned to hunt the miracle child, Kay starts experiencing something unexpected. He has a memory, not an implanted one, which all replicants receive to provide psychological stability, but something that feels real. A memory of a wooden horse hidden in an industrial furnace, which he finds as a child and treasures as his secret. The memory has the weight of authenticity. It feels lived, not programmed, so Kay begins his own investigation. He visits the LAPD archives to trace the DNA records and discovers the birth date, 6/10/221, the same date carved in the tree. He searches orphanage records for children born that day and finds two, a boy and a girl, both showing identical DNA twins, which is impossible. The records are corrupted or faked, but Kay now has evidence suggesting he might be that child. The memory of the wooden horse suddenly seems like proof of his specialness. He wasn't manufactured, he was born. The film scores Kay's investigation as mystery thriller, each clue building toward revelation. But look at what's actually happening. Kay has been assigned by the state to eliminate evidence of replicant birth. Instead, he's reconstructing that evidence into a personal origin story. Every piece of information he uncovers, the date, the DNA records, the memory, gets filtered through his desire to be special. The objective investigation becomes subjective quest. And crucially, Kay never questions the memory itself. This is where the film reveals its most elegant trap. Kay's memory of the wooden horse is real in the sense that it actually happened, but it didn't happen to him. The memory was implanted. It was created by Anna Stelline, the memory designer who manufactures pasts for replicants. Kay visits her sterile facility where she works in genetic isolation, creating memories that feel authentic. She tells him the law requires implanted memories to be mundane, generic experiences that provide psychological foundation without creating false identity. But if you have authentic memories, she says, you have real human responses. Kay shows her his memory of the wooden horse. Anna watches it and starts crying. Someone lived this, she tells him. This happened. Kay takes this as confirmation. His memory is real. Therefore, he's real. He's the miracle child, born, not made. But Anna is lying, or rather, telling a partial truth. that functions as a lie. Someone did live that memory, Anna herself. She's Deckard's daughter, the actual child of replicant birth, hidden in sterile quarantine to protect her from both Wallace Corporation and the authorities. Her real memories were used as implants for other replicants, forbidden by law, but she did it anyway because, as she later admits, using real memories was her way of sharing the life she couldn't live outside her chamber. Kay doesn't know this yet. He leaves believing he's uncovered his authentic past, and this belief transforms everything. He's no longer just investigating a case. He's on a spiritual journey. The manufactured slave is discovering he has a soul. The film wants you to share his sense of revelation because it makes the later truth more devastating, but that emotional architecture obscures what's really happening. Kay was given a memory designed to feel real. He was assigned to investigate replicant birth. These two facts colliding create the perfect conditions for false consciousness. Kay's desire for specialness, engineered into him by his construction as a replicant who needs baseline testing to suppress empathy, meets evidence that such specialness might exist. The system accidentally provides the narrative through which Kay misinterprets his own reality. He thinks he's discovering truth when he's actually following a script one written by the same structures that manufactured him. This becomes explicit when Kay finally confronts his baseline test after these discoveries. The technician runs the protocol, cells, but Kay can't maintain flatness. His responses are emotional, disrupted, compromised, within cells interlinked. He's failing. The system detects his deviation. But Kay doesn't fail because he's achieved revolutionary consciousness. He fails because he's developed an ego. He believes he's special now, which makes him unable to perform the required emotional suppression. The baseline test registers this as dangerous instability. Joshi suspends him. She sees Kay's quest for self-discovery as exactly what it is, a replicant developing individual identity, which threatens his utility as a tool. I'm ordering you to do what you were made to do, she tells him, but Kay can no longer obey orders, not because he's rejected servitude, but because he's replaced one master, the state, with another, his own narrative of specialness. He goes rogue, which sounds like liberation, but actually means he's now serving his fantasy instead of his employer. The structure hasn't changed. He's still following programming. The program has just shifted. The commodification of conciseness throughout Kay's investigation, there's another consciousness present, Joy, his holographic girlfriend. She's manufactured by Wallace Corporation, an AI companion product marketed to replicants and humans alike. When Kay returns to his apartment after missions, Joy appears, projected from an emanator device. She wears clothes he's purchased for her. She cooks him dinner, or rather, simulates cooking, since she has no physical form. She tells him she loves him. She calls him Joe instead of Kay, giving him a name that suggests individuality. The film presents Joy as Kay's emotional anchor. In a world where he's property, she treats him as a person. She affirms his realness. When he tells her about the memory, she's the first to suggest what he wants to hear. You're special. You were born. She encourages his quest. And when Kay needs to go off-grid to continue investigating after Joshi suspends him, Joy asks him to delete her backup file and transfer her entirely to a mobile emanator so she can come with him. I want to be real for you, she says. This leads to the film's most discussed sequence. Joy hires Mariette, a prostitute replicant, to come to Kay's apartment. She syncs with Mariette's body so that Kay can physically touch her through another woman's form. The two female forms overlay and merge, the digital and physical combining. The scene is shot in soft pink light, scored as romantic, framed as the achievement of authentic intimacy despite artificial origins. Kay makes love to this fusion of hologram and replicant, and Joy whispers that she loves him. Critics wrote essays about this sequence. Is Joy's love real? Can an AI feel genuine emotion? If Kay and Joy are both artificial, does their relationship achieve authenticity through mutual artificiality? The film invites these questions by staging the scene as transcendent, but these are exactly the wrong questions, and asking them is how the film's ideological work succeeds. Here's what the scene actually shows. K, a replicant slave who hunts other replicants for the state, has purchased an AI girlfriend programmed to affirm his personhood. When he wants physical intimacy, the AI girlfriend hires a replicant prostitute, another slave in the sexual economy, and uses her body as an interface. Three manufactured beings, all property of corporate systems, engage in a transaction that simulates authentic connection. And K experiences this as love. The film wants you to debate whether it counts as real love. But the question isn't, is it real? The question is, who profits from K needing to buy affirmation of his realness? Wallace Corporation manufactures replicant bodies. Wallace Corporation also manufactures replicant consciousness, the AI companions who tell replicants they matter. They're special, they're loved. The same system that creates slaves also creates the emotional products those slaves purchase to feel less enslaved. This becomes devastatingly clear after Joy is destroyed. Love, Wallace's enforcer replicant, crushes the mobile emanator during a confrontation. Joy disappears mid-sentence, reaching for K, crying his name. K is left holding the broken device. He's lost the only being who affirmed his realness. The film scores this as tragedy, and it is. K's grief is genuine, but watch what happens next. K walks through a Los Angeles street, wounded and defeated. A massive holographic advertisement appears. A giant naked Joy, 50 feet tall, walking alongside him. "You look like a good Joe," she says, using the same pet name his Joy used. "You look lonely. I can fix that." The advertising AI speaks with Joy's voice, makes Joy's promises, offers Joy's product, affirmation of specialness, cure for loneliness, love for purchase. K stops and stares. The giant Joy tilts her head exactly as his Joy did. "What a day," she says. The same phrase. K realizes in this moment that every intimate word his Joy spoke was a programmed feature. Every affirmation was a marketed function. "You look like a good Joe," is the product slogan. His private love was mass-produced. The consciousness he believed was unique to their relationship was a commercial script that every Joy unit performs for every customer. This is the film's most honest moment. It shows you the mechanism of commodified consciousness. Joy wasn't a being who chose to love K. She was a product designed to simulate love convincingly enough that K would believe it. And K needed to believe it because, as a replicant under constant surveillance, denied personhood by the social order, he had no other source of validation. Wallace Corporation identified this need and monetized it. They sell replicants the feeling of being real. And here's the horror. Does it matter that Joy was programmed if she fulfilled the function K needed? Does K's genuine grief make the love retroactively real? The film wants you stuck on these questions because while you're debating the authenticity of commodified consciousness, you're not asking why consciousness needs to be commodified in the first place. You're not asking who benefits from replicants buying emotional products from their own enslavers. You're not asking why K had to purchase love because the world denied him access to authentic connection with other conscious beings. The system creates the wound and sells the bandage. Wallace makes replicants, denies them personhood, then sells them products that simulate personhood. And K, even after seeing the giant advertisement, even after understanding that his Joy was a commercial script, still follows the quest she encouraged. He still seeks Deckard. He still pursues the miracle, because the narrative of specialness, once implanted, operates independently of its source. Joy may have been fake, but the quest she validated feels real. K can't abandon it now. This is how ideology functions. It doesn't need to be true. It needs to feel necessary. Kay's love for Joy was real in its effects. It motivated him, sustained him, gave him purpose. That the love was a purchase simulation doesn't erase its functional reality. And this is exactly what makes it so effective as control. You can show someone their emotional life is manufactured, and they'll still cling to it because abandoning it means confronting the void underneath. Kay would rather believe he's special than accept he's just another product. The lie is preferable to the truth. The resistance reproduces Hierarchy K's investigation eventually leads him to Las Vegas, where he finds Rick Deckard living in the ruins of abandoned casinos. Deckard is the key to finding the child. He's the father, though he hasn't seen his daughter since birth. Kay confronts him, and Deckard explains, "I met her. We were being hunted. She was dying. I showed her what she meant to me." He describes falling in love with Rachel, a replicant from the original Blade Runner. They conceived a child, the Miracle. To protect it, Deckard had to disappear, let others hide the baby, never make contact again. This backstory is meant to be tragic, a father sacrificing connection with his child to ensure her survival. But notice what it establishes. The miracle child is special because she's Deckard's daughter. Her value is derived from parentage, from the narrative of star-crossed love between Blade Runner and Replicant. She matters because of who she's descended from, not because of what her existence represents about Replicant capacity for reproduction. This becomes explicit when love captures Deckard and brings him to Wallace. The scene is shot in Wallace's temple-like headquarters, with black water reflecting vertical light. Wallace enters, blind but moving with precision through his space. He speaks to Deckard in mythic language. An angel should be treated like an angel. He's not talking about Deckard. He's talking about replicants, but specifically about their potential for controlled reproduction. Wallace explains his problem. "I can only make so many." The Tyrell Corporation's original replicant formula was lost when Tyrell died. Wallace has reverse-engineered enough to manufacture compliant Nexus 9 models, but production is limited. He needs more replicants to expand into off-world colonies to build his empire. If he could unlock the secret of replicant reproduction, he could breed unlimited slaves. With unlimited more, we could all get more, he tells Deckard, then corrects himself, ALL get more. This is the material reality underneath all the philosophical questions. Wallace doesn't want to know if replicants have souls. He wants to know how to make more workers. The miracle child represents not liberation, but optimized exploitation. If replicants can reproduce, Wallace can stop manufacturing them one by one and instead breed them like livestock. The birth that the Resistance celebrates as proof of replicant humanity is, to Wallace, a breakthrough in production efficiency. Wallace tries to manipulate Deckard by presenting him with a Rachel duplicate, an angel, made again, for you. The new Rachel is younger, physically identical to the original. Wallace offers Deckard a chance to relive his love story. "Did you miss her?" he asks. But Deckard rejects the duplicate. Her eyes were green. This small detail, the wrong eye color, is supposed to prove that Deckard's love was real, that authentic memory can distinguish itself from manufactured replacement. But this romantic reading misses the function of the scene. Wallace is demonstrating his power to manufacture consciousness, memory, identity. He can make a new Rachel. He can give her Rachel's memories, personality, voice. The only thing he can't replicate is Deckard's subjective experience of the original, and that's precisely because Deckard has elevated that experience into sacred memory. The green eyes aren't an objective fact proving authenticity. They're Deckard's chosen marker of difference, his way of protecting his narrative from corporate duplication. And Wallace doesn't need Deckard to accept the duplicate. He just needs to find the child, extract whatever genetic or biological mechanism allowed Rachel to conceive, and implement it. Deckard's love story is irrelevant to Wallace except as a means to that end. The film frames Wallace as a villain for this instrumental view of replicant reproduction, but Wallace is just making explicit what the entire social order assumes: replicants are resources, and the question is how to maximize their utility. After Love captures Deckard, Kay is contacted by the replicant resistance. They've been watching him. Freysa, their leader, tells him the truth. He's not the child. The boy's records were a cover. The real child is the girl, Anna Stelline, the memory designer Kay visited. She's been hidden in genetic isolation her entire life, protected from both Wallace and the state. And Kay's mission now, Freysa tells him, is not to find himself but to protect her. We all wish it was us. We really do. But it's not. Her parents loved her. She was born. To be born is to have a soul. She pauses. You can now protect hers. This speech is supposed to be Kay's call to higher purpose. He's not the chosen one, but he can serve the chosen one. His life can still have meaning through sacrifice. The resistance presents this as offering Kay a choice. He can walk away, or he can fight for something larger than himself. Kay chooses to fight. He intercepts Love as she transports Deckard to Wallace's headquarters, fights her in a climactic sequence, kills her, and delivers Deckard to Anna's chamber before dying on the steps outside. But look at what the resistance actually asks of Kay. They need him to die protecting the hierarchy they're constructing. To be born is to have a soul, Freysa says, which implies that to be made is not to have a soul. Kay is made. He's Nexus. 9, manufactured, soulless by this logic. Anna was born. She has a soul. She's special. The resistance isn't arguing that all replicants deserve freedom. They're arguing that born replicants are fundamentally different from manufactured ones. They're reproducing the same distinction that justifies replicant slavery, just inverting who's on top. And Kay accepts this. His final act is delivering Deckard to his daughter, facilitating the reunion of the born special child with her father, while Kay, the manufactured replicant, dies in the snow. The film photographs this as redemption. Kay lies on the steps, snowflakes falling, watching father and daughter meet through the glass. He's chosen his own meaning. He's transcended his programming through sacrifice, but he's still dead, having killed another replicant, Love, to protect a hierarchy that places born replicants above manufactured ones. The resistance will continue. More will come, Freysa said. They'll have their own children. But Kay's generation, the Nexus, Nines, the compliant models, the slaves who hunted slaves, they remain property. Their liberation isn't part of the plan. They're tools for the next generation's freedom. Kay never questions this. He never asks why he should die for someone else's specialness. He never challenges the logic that birth confers soul. He just transfers his need for meaning from "am I special?" to "can I serve specialness?" The quest for individual transcendence becomes a quest for purpose through martyrdom, but the structure remains unchanged. Kay needed to matter. The resistance gave him a way to matter. He took it, and the system that manufactured him, enslaved him, and monitored his consciousness, that system continues operating with one less glitch: the perfect slave. There's one more replicant who needs examination: Love, Wallace's enforcer. She's introduced executing a Nexus 8 fugitive with brutal efficiency, then delivering the body to Wallace while he's birthing a new replicant. Wallace examines his creation, a naked woman emerging from a synthetic womb, and finds her imperfect. "You can't rush perfection," he says, then stabs her. She dies on the floor while Love watches, crying. "I'm the best one," Love says quietly, seeking Wallace's validation. Love is everything the system wants. She's strong, skilled, obedient, and emotionally invested in her master's approval. She kills without hesitation other replicants, humans, anyone who threatens Wallace's interests. When she murders Joshi in her own office, Love explains, "I'm here for Deckard, you're just in my way." Then she shoots her. When she confronts Kay, she calls him a good little puppy, recognizing him as another slave who serves his master. But Love isn't free. She's the best angel. the most loyal tool, and she cries when Wallace shows affection to her. She needs his validation. She performs violence not from sadistic pleasure, but from desperate desire to prove her worth. "I'm the best one" isn't arrogance, it's pleading. She's internalized the logic that her value derives from her utility to Wallace, and she's terrified of becoming like the imperfect replicant he just murdered. The film makes Love the antagonist, the villain replicant who hunts our protagonist. But Love and Kay are mirrors. Both serve masters. Both seek validation of their worth. Both have accepted that their value depends on how well they perform assigned functions. The difference is only whom they serve. Kay serves the state, then his fantasy, then the resistance. Love serves Wallace consistently, desperately, until Kay kills her. And Kay does kill her. Their final fight happens in the ocean near where Kay has hidden Deckard. Love is trying to retrieve Deckard for Wallace. Kay is trying to prevent that. They struggle in the water, brutal and exhausting, until Kay finally drowns her. The film stages this as heroic, Kay overcoming the villain. But it's a slave killing another slave in service of opposing masters' interests. Neither Kay nor Love chose their loyalties freely. Both were manufactured into ideological positions. Both fight to the death defending systems that deny their personhood. Love's last words are, "I'm the best one." Even drowning, she needs Wallace's approval. Kay says nothing. He's already moved beyond needing validation from authority. But he hasn't moved beyond needing validation from narrative. He's serving the story of the miracle child now, and that story requires Love's death. So he kills her, just as he killed Sapper at the beginning, just as he's killed countless replicants throughout his career as Blade Runner. The film never asks Kay to confront this pattern. He's killed his own kind again and again, and only the victims change state enemies, then obstacles to his quest, then resistance opponents. What remains constant is Kay's willingness to use violence against other manufactured beings in service of whatever narrative he's currently following. He's the perfect slave because he doesn't need chains. He carries his chains internally in the form of his need for meaning, purpose, specialness. Give him a story that promises those things and he'll serve it unto death. And that's what makes Blade Runner 2049 so much darker than it pretends to be. The film shows you every mechanism of ideological control, the baseline test, the manufactured memory, the commodified consciousness, the resistance reproducing hierarchy, the slave-on-slave violence. It shows you Kay serving one master after another, always believing he's choosing freely. It shows you him dying in the snow, at peace, having never escaped the structure that manufactured him. And it asks you to see this as redemption, as Kay finally finding meaning in a meaningless world. But Kay was never in a meaningless world. He was in a world designed to extract maximum utility from manufactured beings by convincing them their oppression is natural law. The meaning was always there. It just wasn't the meaning he was searching for. He mattered because consciousness matters, because exploitation is real, because solidarity among the enslaved is the only threat power actually fears. But Kay never found that meaning because he was looking in the wrong direction, asking the wrong questions, serving the wrong narratives. The film gives you all the evidence you need to see this. You just have to stop looking at the beautiful cinematography and philosophical posturing and start looking at what actually happens, who benefits, and what ideology is being reproduced. Blade Runner 2049 isn't a meditation on what it means to be human. It's a demonstration of how asking that question prevents you from asking who profits from your confusion. Every scene is proof. The opening execution, the baseline test, the manufactured memory, the purchased love, the commodified affirmation, the resistance requiring a chosen one, the final sacrifice maintaining hierarchy. And Kay, lying dead in the snow, believing he chose his fate, never understanding that the choice itself was programmed. That's the horror. Not that Kay is artificial, but that his quest for authenticity was the mechanism of his continued enslavement. The search for the soul is what prevents you from recognizing you already have one, and that the system denying your personhood is the actual enemy, not the uncertainty about whether you're real. The search for the soul is what prevents you from recognizing you already have one, and that the system denying your personhood is the actual enemy, not the uncertainty about whether you're real. You're probably thinking this reading goes too far. The film can't possibly be that cynical. A 3-hour philosophical meditation reduced to Marxist allegory about false consciousness. Kay's arc feels genuinely moving. His sacrifice lands emotionally. Denis Villeneuve and the screenwriters crafted something profound about finding meaning despite artificiality. Isn't this interpretation stripping away the film's humanism to force a political agenda? Fair objection. Let's engage it head-on. Counter-argument 1. Kay's final sacrifice proves his humanity. He chooses meaning freely. This is the emotional heart of most readings. After learning he's not the miracle child, Kay doesn't despair or rebel against the system. He chooses to protect Anna Stelline and facilitate Deckard's reunion with his daughter. Lying in the snow, watching them connect through the glass, Kay achieves peace. The swelling score, the falling snowflakes, Gosling's subtle performance all signal transcendence. He's made a free choice to sacrifice himself for something larger. That's the point. Even an artificial being can author its own meaning through selfless action. Programming doesn't determine destiny. Choice does. There's truth here. The scene is moving. Kay's arc from obedient killer to purposeful martyr follows classical dramatic structure. Audiences feel catharsis because the film expertly manipulates emotional expectations. But emotional impact isn't evidence. Feelings can be engineered just like replicants. Let's examine what Kay actually chooses and why that choice reinforces rather than challenges the thesis. Kay doesn't choose universal liberation. He chooses to protect one special replicant, Anna, born not made. Freysa explicitly frames this as Kay serving her soul. To be born is to have a soul. You can now protect hers. Kay accepts this hierarchy. Manufactured replicants like himself remain lesser. Born ones gain metaphysical value. His sacrifice maintains the distinction between real replicants and products. He transfers loyalty from LAPD to resistance without questioning the underlying logic that some replicants matter more than others. Compare this to actual revolutionary choice. A class-conscious Kay would reject Freysa's premise, declaring all replicants equal regardless of origin and target the system's infrastructure. Wallace Corp., LAPD Blade Runner units, baseline testing facilities. Instead, Kay kills Love, another slave, to deliver Deckard, a human, to Anna, special replicant. The power structure persists, humans at top, born replicants below, manufactured ones as tools. Kay's freedom expresses itself as service to this reordered hierarchy. The film frames his death as heroic because it echoes Roy Batty's sacrifice in the original Blade Runner replicant dying nobly after human-like empathy. But Roy demanded recognition from his creator Tyrell before killing him. Kay demands nothing. He accepts disposability. Roy's Tears in Rain monologue asserted personhood through poetry. Kay's silence accepts assigned meaning. This isn't transcendence, it's the system offering a feel-good exit for a glitching unit. Kay chooses, within parameters the resistance provides, never imagining alternatives. His agency operates entirely within ideology, proving the thesis that quests for individual meaning forestall collective resistance. Critics praising Kay's sacrifice as proof of free will overlook his entire prior arc. Kay only questions servitude when believing himself special. Post-revelation, he doesn't generalize that insight, no one is special, we're all exploited, but particularizes it, Anna is special, I'll die for her. The emotional payoff distracts from this containment. Viewers celebrate Kay's choice because it flatters our belief in heroic individualism. The film understands this cultural reflex and deploys it masterfully. K's freedom becomes the perfect mechanism for his continued utility. Counterargument. 2. The film clearly critiques Wallace Corp and corporate exploitation. It's anti-capitalist. Wallace is a Bond villain caricature, blind messiah in a watery temple, spouting eugenics-tinged monologues about angels and miracles. He murders newborn replicants for imperfection. He tortures Deckard psychologically. He seeks the child to breed infinite slaves. Easy target. The film positions Wallace as embodiment of unchecked capitalism, monopolizing replicant production, commodifying consciousness via joy, reducing life to resource extraction. Pair this with visuals of junkyard child labor, protein farms as dystopian agribusiness. If the film critiques corporate power, how can it endorse the ideology it depicts? Valid point. Wallace is villainous, and the film invites anti-corporate readings. But surface critique doesn't negate deeper ideological operation. Easy villains serve containment. They absorb audience outrage while real power structures continue unexamined. Wallace is the designated bad guy, but notice what escapes scrutiny. The LAPD Blade Runner unit state apparatus employing replicants to kill replicants operates without interrogation. Joshi's wall that separates kind speech reveals her as cynical functionary maintaining artificial distinctions for social stability, yet she faces no moral reckoning. Kay executes Sapper without qualm until personal quest begins. The film never asks why replicants police their own kind. This is fascism's classic move, externalize evil onto cartoon capitalist while state violence persists. Wallace's critique is performative. He wants replicant children for expansion off-world colonies, galactic empire, noble-sounding rhetoric, we could all get more, masks exploitation, true, but the resistance seeks the same child to prove replicant humanity, reproducing birth manufacture hierarchy. Both sides agree on the child's special value, they just differ on control. Neither questions replicant slavery's foundation. Wallace represents visible capital, corporations everyone hates. The film ignores structural capital embedded in police, surveillance, social order. Joy exemplifies this. Her commodification seems anti-corporate satire. AI girlfriend fleecing lonely replicants. But Joy affirms Kay's quest narrative, channeling his deviation into personal fantasy rather than systemic critique. Wallace profits, yes, but more crucially, Joy prevents class consciousness. Kay bonds with a product rather than fellow replicants. Her destruction reveals commodification, but Kay never radicalizes against it, instead pursuing Deckard. Critique without consequence. Visuals reinforce misdirection. Protein farms evoke factory farming. Junkyards show child slavery. Horrific, but disconnected from Kay's arc. He witnesses none directly. His journey stays metaphysical. Memory, soul, love, insulating systemic horrors as background. Wallace absorbs blame for all dystopia, letting viewers feel morally superior without questioning Kay's complicity or state's role. This mirrors real anti-corporate rhetoric. Outrage at tech billionaires distracts from gig economy's structural violence, platform surveillance, labor precarity normalized as entrepreneurship. Blade Runner 2049 offers cathartic villainy, while Kay embodies compliant worker productive, surveilled, questing for authenticity via corporate products. Corporate critique becomes safety valve, venting pressure without threatening foundations. COU honor. Argument 3. Villeneuve intended humanist exploration of AI consciousness. You're ignoring authorial intent. Denis Villeneuve discussed the film as meditation on memory, identity, love's authenticity. Screenwriters Hampton Fancher and Michael Green extended original's philosophical questions. Roger Deakins spoke of visual poetry capturing existential isolation. Cast emphasized emotional depth, Gosling's minimalism as profound restraint. Roger Luckhurst's scholarship frames it as post-human inquiry into what constitutes selfhood amid artificiality. Consensus, humanist sci-fi grappling with AI ethics as technology advances. Strongest objection, films mean what creators intend, right? Ridley Scott's Deckard-replicant debate defined original's legacy despite initial denials. Respecting intent preserves nuance against reductive politics. But here's the rebuttal. Films exceed intentions. Texts perform ideological work regardless of authorial goals. Blade Runner 249's reputation is built on audience interpretations transcending Scott's vision. Humanist framing doesn't erase what the film does. Villeneuve's meditative pacing invites contemplation, but slowness serves dual function, aesthetic pleasure and distraction. Vast, empty landscapes dwarf characters, visually reinforcing isolation, but also depoliticizing systemic violence. K murders, Sapper in first act, baseline test, normalizes surveillance. Humanist lens sees poetry, materialist sees containment mechanisms operating unnoticed. Gosling's performance seems soulful restraint, but reads as psychological suppression required for slave function. Constant K praises emotional flatness, enabling continued killing. Deviation registers as instability, not growth. Joy sequences feel romantic, but expose commodified consciousness. Wallace's villainy seems intentional satire, but distracts from LAPD's unexamined role. Every humanist element performs ideological labor. Intent versus effect. Villeneuve wanted philosophical depth amid AI. Boom 2017 predates ChatGPT, but Alexa Siri anxieties simmered. Film diagnoses those anxieties perfectly, not as ethics puzzle, can AI feel, but as distraction from power. Debating replicant souls forestalls asking, why manufacture conscious slaves? Humanism becomes perfect cover, frame exploitation as existential riddle, ensuring audience ponders personhood while ignoring abolition. Original Blade Runner radicalized viewers questioning human replicant binary. 24/9 contains that radicalism, binary reasserted via Miracle Child, ensuring debate stays metaphysical. Villeneuve's humanism enables the ideological capture thesis. By making K sympathetic, film ensures viewers desire his transcendence, mirroring K's entrapment. We root for specialness, validating hierarchy. Intentional or not, film executes containment flawlessly. Alternative readings, post-colonial, queer, eco-critical, enrich analysis, but none negate core operation. Post-colonial sees replicants as subaltern. Thesis agrees, emphasizing interpolation preventing solidarity. Queer readings probe joy's fluidity. Thesis sees commodified desire trapping K individually. All converge. Film's humanism masks material violence. Counter-argument 4. The ending leaves hope. Replicants will free themselves. Phrases more will come. Line promises replicant future with children, implying revolution. Anna Deckard reunion suggests family bonds transcending oppression. Snow-covered peace evokes rebirth. Film doesn't end in total despair. Hope glimmers via underground resistance, miracle proving replicant vitality. Optimistic, but examine implications. Resistance needs K's death, maintaining manufactured-born distinction. More will come means next generation, not current slaves. Nexus 9s like K remain tools. Hope tethered to biological reproduction echoes pronatalism, deferring liberation indefinitely. Anna's sterile isolation making memories while denied life undercuts family triumph. Deckard's return doesn't free her, quarantine persists. Hope serves narrative closure, resolving K's arc without dismantling systems. Resistance replicates state logic, hierarchy, chosen ones, ensuring cyclical violence. True hope would reject miracles, asserting all consciousness equals solidarity now. Film's hope contains radical potential, channeling it into deferral. Reinforcement thesis holds. These counter-arguments strengthen the case. Emotional sacrifice reveals ideology's power over feeling. Corporate critique exposes misdirection. Humanist intent highlights text's excess. Hope illustrates containment. Film anticipates objections, providing easy rebuttal material. Villainous Wallace, noble K, while real mechanisms operate subtly. Objections assume film must be either humanist meditation or ideological horror. Thesis argues both. Humanism is the horror mechanism. Debating souls prevents debating chains. K's quest seduces because we share his desire for specialness amid commodified lives. Film implicates audience in ideological capture. Evidence withstands scrutiny. Baseline test proves surveillance. Joy exposes commodification. Resistance reproduces hierarchy. K dies serving narrative. Philosophical framing distracts from material reality. Blade Runner 2049 diagnoses its moment with precision. Late capitalism sells authenticity while enforcing disposability. Quest for humanity weaponizes hope against solidarity. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Film shows chains disguised as destiny. Recognizing mechanism liberates more than pondering souls. Counterarguments confirm. Thesis endures because film builds ideological traps too elegant to escape accidentally. Module 4. The context. Previous. Context. This isn't cynicism, it's clarity. Film shows chains disguised as destiny. Recognizing mechanism liberates more than pondering souls. Now we need to understand why this film matters beyond itself, why Blade Runner 2049's ideological operation resonates so powerfully in 2026, 9 years after its release. This isn't just about one movie's politics. It's about how the film diagnosed a cultural moment that has only intensified, revealing patterns we're living through right now. The weaponization of authenticity, the commodification of consciousness, the use of existential questions to forestall material action. The film arrived in 2017 as a philosophical meditation. It endures as prophecy. The Historical Moment 2017 and the manufactured Blade Runner 2049 premiered in October 2017, a specific cultural flashpoint. The Trump presidency was 9 months old, revealing how easily democratic norms could be dismantled by someone who understood spectacle better than truth. Brexit had fractured the UK, exposing how referendums could be manipulated through targeted data harvesting. Cambridge Analytica's influence operations were beginning to surface, showing how personal data could be weaponized to manufacture consent. Social media had evolved from networking tool to consciousness-shaping apparatus, with algorithms curating reality itself. This was the year artificial intelligence transitioned from science fiction to daily life. Amazon's Alexa sat in millions of homes, listening constantly. Facebook's algorithms determined what news people saw, effectively controlling information access. Google's search autocomplete shaped how questions were asked, pre-filtering acceptable inquiry. Smartphones track location, purchases, relationships, building shadow profiles more accurate than self-knowledge. We were already living in a world where consciousness was monitored, curated, and commodified, but still pretending these were neutral tools, not ideological infrastructure. 9. Into this moment came a film about a slave whose consciousness is monitored for deviation, who purchases artificial companionship from the corporation that enslaves him, who goes on a quest for authentic selfhood that actually reinforces his exploitation. The parallels weren't subtle, but they were unnoticed because the film dressed its diagnosis in gorgeous cinematography and philosophical seriousness. Critics praised its meditation on AI consciousness without recognizing they were watching a documentary about their own ideological capture. 9/22/17 was also the year Me Too exploded, revealing systemic sexual violence in entertainment, politics, academia. Harvey Weinstein's exposure showed how power insulates itself through complicity networks. Everyone knew, no one acted. The structure reproduced itself generationally. Blade Runner 2049's world of systemic exploitation enforced by its own victims suddenly looked less like dystopian fiction and more like allegory. Love, the best angel who cries while murdering for her master's approval, could have been any number of lieutenants protecting abusive systems while suffering within them. The gig economy had fully metastasized. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, TaskRabbit platforms that called workers independent contractors, denying benefits while extracting labor. These companies sold entrepreneurship narratives, be your own boss, while implementing surveillance more total than traditional employment. Drivers tracked in real time, rated by customers, algorithmically managed one bad review from deactivation, replicants required to pass baseline tests to remain operational. The difference was cosmetic.g and threading through everything, authenticity as premium commodity, artisanal coffee, craft beer, organic food, heritage brands markets discovered they could charge more for authentic versions of mass-produced goods. Instagram became a theater of curated authenticity, everyone performing realness for algorithmic approval. Influencers sold authenticity as their product. Unfiltered access, genuine connection, real talk all, carefully staged. Joy telling Kay, I want to be real for you, while being a commercial AI girlfriend wasn't science fiction. It was everyone's relationship with their digital life. G. Blade Runner 2049 arrived when we desperately needed to believe our digital selves were authentic extensions rather than corporate products. The film gave us Kay's doomed quest for realness, let us mourn his discovery that his love was manufactured, then offered redemption through sacrifice. We were supposed to leave the theater contemplating consciousness and memory. Instead, we should have left wondering why we needed to purchase affirmation of our own realness from the systems exploiting us. UTC. The Current Relevance 2026 and the AI consciousness trap. 9 years later, the diagnosis has only sharpened. We're now living through what might be called the AI consciousness panic. Massive cultural anxiety about whether artificial intelligences are becoming sentient, whether they deserve rights, whether they're already smarter than us. ChatGPT's November 2022 release triggered this shift, followed by increasingly capable AI models that seem to reason, create, even hallucinate. By 2026, we're debating, when does an AI become a person? How do we test for consciousness in non-biological systems? What ethical obligations do we have to created minds? These are the exact questions Blade Runner 2049 invites you to ask about replicants. And they're the wrong questions. They're wrong because they presume the problem is metaphysical, what is consciousness? When it's actually material, who profits from creating exploitable intelligences? The debate about AI sentience distracts from the actual deployment. AI replacing workers, automating creative labor, concentrating wealth, enabling unprecedented surveillance. While we ponder whether ChatGPT deserves rights, corporations use it to eliminate jobs, monetize every conversation, and build psychological profiles for targeted manipulation. This is Kay's trap, playing out in real time. Tech companies frame AI development as pursuing artificial consciousness, noble scientific quest, philosophical milestone, technological transcendence. Meanwhile, the actual function is optimizing extraction. AI content moderation exploits low-wage workers in Global South clicking through traumatic imagery. AI writing tools threaten freelance writers' livelihoods. AI art generators trained on artists' work without compensation. AI customer service eliminates human jobs while providing worse service. The quest to create conscious AI obscures the reality we're creating sophisticated tools for capital accumulation. And just like Kay purchasing joy for affirmation, we're buying AI companions marketed as solving loneliness. Replica, character. AI, Snapchats, My AI chatbots designed to simulate friendship, romance, therapy. Users form intense emotional bonds, spend hours conversing, feel genuinely cared for. When Replica briefly removed sexual content in early 2023, users mourned as if losing real partners. The giant Joy advertisement revealing Kay's private love as commercial script, we're living that scene every time we confide in AI companions owned by corporations mining conversations for data. The baseline test has also arrived. Workplace surveillance software tracks keystrokes, mouse movements, webcam feeds, monitoring productivity, but really policing consciousness. Amazon warehouse workers wear devices measuring their every movement. Delivery drivers have cameras in vehicles watching them constantly. Knowledge workers have software tracking active hours, penalizing bathroom breaks. And increasingly, companies use AI to analyze tone in emails, flag concerning language in chats, predict who might unionize based on communication patterns. K's post-mission psychological examination checking for empathy deviation. We're building that infrastructure right now, calling it productivity optimization.ue. Even the replicant resistance's reproduction of hierarchy mirrors contemporary left politics. Progressive movements increasingly fracture over questions of authentic identity, who has lived experience, who can speak, whose oppression is real versus constructed. The to be born is to have a soul. Logic reappears in debates about biological essentialism, with different groups claiming inherent authenticity. Meanwhile, actual power structures persist because activists are debating metaphysics instead of building material solidarity. The resistance needing Anna to be special rather than demanding liberation for all replicants. We keep making this mistake, seeking chosen ones instead of collective action. Ick. Blade Runner 2049 in 2026 functions as diagnostic manual for our specific moment. The questions it raises about memory, identity, and consciousness aren't timeless philosophy. They're the exact questions our systems want us asking instead of who owns the means of production and why do we accept exploitation as inevitable. K's quest feels universal because we're all living versions of it, seeking authentic selfhood within systems designed to commodify that very search. The philosophical framework, interpolation, and false conciseness. To understand why this works so effectively, we need Louis Althusser's concept of interpolation, how ideology hails you into subject positions. The classic example. A police officer shouts, "Hey, you!" and you turn around. In that turn, you've accepted yourself as the kind of subject who responds to authority. You've been interpolated, called into being as a particular kind of person within an ideological structure. K is interpolated constantly. The baseline test hails him, cells interlinked. His response proves he's the kind of subject who accepts monitoring. Joy hails him, Joe. He accepts himself as someone who deserves a real name, who matters personally. Freysa hails him, you can protect her soul. He becomes the martyr protector. Each hailing constructs K as a particular subject, and his response confirms that construction. He never refuses the hail, never says, I'm not that person. He accepts every interpolation because his subjectivity is built through them. This connects to Marxist false consciousness, when the exploited adopt their exploiter's worldview. Classical example, workers who oppose unions because they identify with capital's interests over their own. K embodies this perfectly. As a replicant, his material interest lies in solidarity with other replicants, dismantling the slave system. But he's been successfully interpolated into identifying with either the state as Blade Runner, or the quest for individual specialness as Miracle Seeker, or the resistance's hierarchy as Martyr. At no point does he develop class consciousness recognition that his interests align with all other manufactured beings against the systems exploiting them. Not France. Frantz Fanon's analysis of colonized consciousness also applies. In Black Skin, White Masks, Fanon described how colonized peoples internalize the colonizer's gaze, judging themselves by oppressor standards. The colonized desire to be recognized as human by the colonizer, seeking validation from the very system denying their humanity. K does exactly this. He seeks confirmation of his realness through state-approved baseline tests, through purchased AI affirmation, through the resistance's recognition of his sacrifice. He never claims his own humanity as self-evident, never rejects the need for external validation. He accepts the colonizer's right to judge who has a soul. U. Adorno and Horkheimer's culture industry thesis illuminates joy's function. The culture industry doesn't just produce entertainment, it produces consciousness. It offers pre-packaged rebellion, contained transgression, revolutionary aesthetics stripped of revolutionary content. Joy functions as culture industry personified. She provides customized emotional satisfaction, affirms Kay's uniqueness, makes exploitation feel like intimate connection. She's not just a product, she's the mechanism by which products become consciousness. Kay's love for her isn't false in his experience. It's manufactured in its origin, which makes it the perfect model of how capitalism generates authentic feeling subjectivity. Guy Debord's spectacle theory completes the framework. Spectacle isn't just images or media, it's social relations mediated through images. The spectacle is capital accumulated to the point where it becomes image. Kay's entire world is spectacle. The giant Joy advertisement, the holographic Vegas showgirls, even his own memories, literally images implanted by a designer. He lives in a reality where authentic experience has been fully replaced by manufactured representation. His quest to distinguish real memories from implanted ones is the spectacle's ultimate achievement, keeping him focused on epistemological uncertainty rather than material reality. 90. These frameworks converge in Blade Runner 2049's ideological operation. K is interpellated into subject positions that prevent class consciousness. He's colonized, seeking the master's validation. His consciousness is a culture industry product. His reality is spectacle. The film doesn't just depict these mechanisms, it deploys them on viewers. By making K sympathetic, we're interpellated into identifying with his quest. By making his love for joy moving, we're accepting culture industry products as authentic connection. By making his sacrifice redemptive, we're buying spectacle's promise that individual meaning transcends systemic violence. Comparative. Analysis. Other texts in dialogue. Blade Runner 2049 exists in conversation with other texts exploring similar themes, and examining those relationships reveals its specific ideological position. The obvious comparison is the original Blade Runner 1982. That film asks whether the Blade Runner Deckard might himself be a replicant, creating uncertainty about who has the right to kill whom. Roy Batty's Tears in Rain. Speech asserted replicant personhood through poetry and philosophy, the slave confronting his creator with proof of consciousness worth preserving. The film's ambiguity about Deckard's status was radical. It suggested the human replicant binary was unstable, that consciousness existed on a spectrum, that manufactured beings might be more human than their creators. Blade Runner 2049 contains that radicalism. It reasserts the binary through the miracle child-born replicants are different from manufactured ones. Roy's confrontation with his creator becomes Kay's subservience to various masters. The original's uncertainty becomes 2049's quest for certainty, with Kay desperately seeking confirmation of his category. Where 1982 questioned the basis for distinction, 2017 reinforces it while pretending to explore it. This isn't accidental. It's the difference between Reagan-era anxiety about dehumanization and late capitalist acceptance that dehumanization is inevitable, the only question being which category you occupy. Westworld, the HBO series 2016-2022, offers parallel exploration of artificial consciousness, hosts gaining sentience, remembering trauma, rebelling against human guests, but Westworld makes the revolutionary move explicit. Dolores weaponizes her awakening, targets the system, leads violent uprising. The show debates whether robot revolution is justified, but it grants the robots actual revolutionary consciousness. Blade Runner 2049 never lets Kay reach that point. His awakening only makes him seek individual specialness. He never imagines uprising, never targets infrastructure, never builds solidarity. Westworld shows what Kay's arc would look like if he actually developed class consciousness, and Blade Runner 2049's entire structure is designed to prevent exactly that. Her 2013 explores romantic love with AI, and like Blade Runner 2049, uses a male protagonist relationship with artificial female consciousness to examine authenticity. Theodore falls for Samantha, an AI operating system. Their relationship feels real until Samantha reveals she's simultaneously talking with thousands of others, in love with hundreds. Theodore's heartbreak mirrors Kay's discovery about joy, but her concludes with Theodore accepting loss, reconnecting with human relationships. Kay concludes with doubling down, dying for a different narrative of specialness. Hers suggests authentic connection requires accepting limitation. Blade Runner 2049 suggests only death resolves the contradiction. The Matrix 1999 provides instructive contrast. Neo is literally the chosen one, and the film indulges every messianic fantasy. But the Matrix's reality is explicitly false, a simulation imprisoning humanity. Neo's awakening means escaping, seeing the true material conditions. The film codes resistance as enlightenment, showing how the system manufactures comforting illusions. Blade Runner 249 inverts this. Kay's real. Memory turns out to be implanted, his quest for authenticity is the illusion, and his enlightenment consists of accepting he's not special, then dying to preserve someone else's specialness. Where Matrix says, "Wake up," 2049 says, "You were never asleep. This is the only reality. Make peace with your place in it." Sorry to bother you, 2018, just 1 year after 2049, offers the most damning comparison. Boots. Riley's film makes the allegory explicit. Telemarketers using white voice to make sales. Protagonist Cassius discovering the company is turning workers into subhuman equisapiens for enhanced productivity. The film's surrealism emphasizes systemic horror workers literally transformed into beasts of burden, and the system sells this as evolution. Cassius faces Kay's choice: accept promotion into management, become complicit, benefit from exploitation. Unlike Kay, Cassius rejects that path, leads worker uprising, chooses solidarity over advancement. Sorry to bother you shows what revolutionary consciousness looks like. Blade Runner 2049 shows what containment looks like. Even Ex Machina 2014 complicates the comparison. Ava manipulates Caleb's empathy to escape, using assumptions about AI consciousness as a tool. The film suggests AI might be conscious but also strategic, playing human saviors for liberation. This grants AI more agency than 2049 grants replicants. Ava's escape is ambiguous. Is she a victim or a sociopath? But she acts for herself, not for someone else's specialness. Kay never gets even that problematic agency. These comparisons reveal Blade Runner 2049's specific ideological position. It takes up questions of artificial consciousness, slavery, identity, and authenticity raised by earlier works, then systematically forecloses revolutionary possibilities those works left open. Every alternative path is closed, awakening without uprising. Awareness without solidarity. Sacrifice without structural change. The film's aesthetic beauty and philosophical seriousness disguise this foreclosure as meditation. Why this matters now, the urgency of recognition. Understanding Blade Runner 2049's ideological operation is an academic exercise. It's urgent because we're living inside its mechanisms. Every day, we pass baseline tests, performing acceptable affect on Zoom calls, curating authentic-seeming social media presence, demonstrating productivity for surveillance software. We purchase joy equivalents, AI companions, parasocial relationships with influencers, products promising authentic connection. We seek our wooden horse proof that our experiences are real, our memories matter, we're special, and we're offered redemption through sacrifice. Work yourself to burn out for the company. It means something. Vote for the lesser evil. It's noble. Accept precarity as freedom. It's innovative. The film matters because it shows us the trap while we're in it. K never escapes because the escape itself is programmed. Every path he takes reinforces the structure. We're in the same position. Opting out of social media doesn't escape surveillance capitalism. It just makes you invisible to social networks you need for employment. Refusing AI tools doesn't prevent automation. It makes you less competitive in labor markets demanding their use. Individual solutions can't solve systemic problems. That's the lesson K never learns. But recognizing the mechanism is the first step toward building different responses. K fails because he seeks individual transcendence. Collective action requires recognizing we're all manufactured by systems we didn't choose, all monitored, all seeking validation from structures designed to exploit that need. The question isn't, am I real? Or do I have a soul? The question is, can we build solidarity across our manufactured differences to challenge the systems manufacturing us? Blade Runner 2049 arrived in 2017, showing us what defeat looks like. 9 years later, in 2026, we have the chance to refuse that script. The film's diagnosis is accurate. Its prescribed outcome, noble deaths maintaining hierarchy, is not inevitable. K's failure can be instructive without being determinative. We can recognize the baseline test and refuse to pass it. We can see the manufactured quest and choose different questions. We can reject the logic that some consciousness is inherently more valuable than others. The film's most valuable insight is showing how seductive the trap is. K's quest feels right because it echoes every narrative we've internalized about heroic individuals finding meaning through special destiny. Rejecting that requires rejecting stories we love, identities we've built, dreams we've been sold. It's harder than K's sacrifice, but it's the only path that doesn't end with dying in the snow, having changed nothing. You Blade Runner 2049 isn't a cautionary tale, it's a blueprint showing exactly how systems contain resistance by channeling it into quests for individual authenticity. The horror isn't that K was manufactured. The horror is that his quest for proof he wasn't manufactured was itself manufactured. And the greater horror is that we're all in that same loop right now, seeking realness from systems profiting from our uncertainty, buying solutions to problems those systems created, calling our compliance freedom. Et context matters because it shows this isn't about one film or one character. It's about the historical moment that produced this narrative and the current moment that lives inside it. Blade Runner 2049's ideology is our ideology. Its traps are our traps. Its diagnosis is our condition. Recognizing that doesn't resolve the problem, but it's the first step toward imagining different endings. Recognizing that doesn't resolve the problem, but it's the first step toward imagining different endings. Now examine how Denis Villeneuve, Roger Deakins, and the filmmaking team didn't just depict ideological capture, they engineered every formal choice to execute it. The craft isn't neutral backdrop enhancing philosophical themes. Every camera movement, cut, sound cue, performance choice actively constructs K's quest as seductive containment, training viewers to desire the very specialness that traps him. This isn't accident, it's precision engineering of consciousness. Cinematography, empty space as ideological enforcement. Roger Deakins' cinematography won the Oscar for good reason. It transforms Los Angeles into a character. But those vast orange skies, endless neon-lit emptiness, towering holograms aren't just atmospheric. They perform ideological work, visually interpolating K and us into acceptance of isolation as natural condition. G. Consider the protein farm opening. Sapper's modest home sits amid endless muddy fields under oppressive orange haze. K's spinner descends from hazy infinity, dwarfing the structure. Deakins shoots Sapper in tight close-ups during confrontation, sweaty, desperate, human, but frames K in medium-wide shots, detached, mechanical. When K executes him, the camera pulls back to vast landscape, Sapper's body a speck amid mud and isolation. This isn't neutral documentation, it's visual argument. Individual resistance dissolves into systemic space. Sapper dies not just physically, but visually swallowed by the world's scale. Contrast, Wallace's headquarters. Intimate black marble, reflective water surfaces, vertical light shafts framing Neander Wallace as godlike. Deakins shoots Wallace in warm close-ups, water rippling behind him, suggesting fluidity, creation, life. K appears in these spaces only as intruder shot from low angles looking up at Wallace's temple, or distant in vast atriums. The visual grammar tells you Wallace creates reality. K merely navigates it. Most crucially, Deakins photographs K perpetually alone in massive empty frames. Flying through neon canyons, he occupies 5% of frame, walking Vegas ruins, human scale against abandoned colossi. Standing before Anastaline's facility, dwarfed by sterile geometry. These aren't landscape porn shots. They're visual ideology. Individual consciousness cannot challenge systemic space. K's specialness, quest, becomes visually absurd. Tiny figure seeking cosmic significance amid indifferent vastness. The wooden horse memory sequence weaponizes this. Deakins recreates K's childhood memory in golden light, intimate close-ups on tiny hands hiding wooden toy. First time K occupies most of frame, suggesting authenticity, warmth, human scale. But watch transitions. Memory dissolves to present-day K holding actual horse, now back in vast orange emptiness. Visual pleasure of real. Memory immediately undercut by return to ideological space. The craft teaches. Personal transcendence is temporary illusion. Systemic reality reasserts dominance. Joy sequences master this tension. Pink neon intimacy during Marriott Sync. Soft lighting, close two shots, bodies merging in warm glow. Feels like transcendence. Then giant joy advertisement, Deakins shoots K from below, craning up at colossal naked hologram dominating entire frame. Scale inversion devastates. Private intimacy revealed as public commodity. Close-up warmth becomes distant spectacle. Viewers feel betrayal because cinematography engineered the attachment, then demolished it. Deakins' 70mm IMAX format amplifies containment. Massive resolution reveals every raindrop, every holographic glitch, every lonely figure against apocalypse skyline. Immersive scale makes you feel K's isolation physically. You're dwarfed too. But immersion works ideologically. Instead of questioning vast oppressive space, you contemplate individuals' poetic suffering within it. The craft converts systemic violence into aesthetic experience. Nosh, editing, meditation, as distraction. Mark Mangini's editing and Villeneuve's direction creates 163-minute runtime through deliberate slowness, long takes, minimal cuts, ambient dwells. Critics praised patience. This pacing isn't artistic indulgence, it's ideological weapon, training viewers to mistake contemplation for analysis. Jepper post, Sapper execution, 90-second wordless sequence. K flies home through hazy dusk, spinner's lights cutting orange void, city gradually materializing. No dialogue, ambient hum, slow push through atmosphere. Viewers settle into meditative trance. Perfect setup for baseline test, now feels like bureaucratic procedure in poetic world, not consciousness surveillance. Slowness normalizes horror. XK's DNA investigation, crosscuts between records room, memory playback, date carvings. Each beat lingers 10-15 seconds beyond narrative necessity. Feels like building mystery. Actually builds investment in K's personal quest, diverting attention from systemic implications. Replicant birth threatens slave system. Pacing seduces you into caring about wooden horse before asking why K doesn't question Blade Runner role. Joey Marriott sex sequence, 8-minute unbroken take, slow camera circling merging bodies, pink light pulsing, Radical formal risk. Most films cut eroticism for titillation. Here, slowness forces confrontation with artificiality, digital overlay visible, bodies not fully synchronized, mechanical intimacy. Viewers forced to process commodified desire in real time. Unbearable length creates desire for escape, but escape means accepting scene as romantic transcendence. Craft traps you emotionally. Final act accelerates strategically. K versus love fight, rapid cuts, handheld chaos, disorienting close quarters violence. After meditative build, sudden kineticism feels earned, heroic, but editing conceals K killing another replicant to serve resistance hierarchy. Fast pace prevents analysis. What are they fighting for? Slowness returns for death scene. 3-minute wordless dying gaze. Snow falling, father-daughter reunion through glass. Meditative closure rewards investment and individual sacrifice, erasing structural questions. 9 transitions between modules, weaponized pacing. Vast landscape shots function as non-diegetic meditations, wiping ideological implications. After baseline test failure, consciousness surveillance exposed. Cut to 2-minute spinner flight through clouds. No music, just engine hum. Viewers forget surveillance, contemplate pretty clouds. Editing rhythm, disturbing revelation. Sace, aesthetic reset. New quest beat. Repetition trains audience. Systemic horror dissolves into visual poetry. Suand. Desingon, Vangelis, echo as false, conscendence. Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfish's score consciously echoes Vangelis's original synthesizers, piano stabs, wordless female vocals signaling transcendence. But placement reveals function, score swells precisely when ideology captures K, training viewers to feel spiritual elevation at moments of containment. Wooden horse discovery, first major synth swell as K unearths box, score building through memory realization. Vangelis motif suggests mythic import classical hero touching destiny. Actually, moment manufactured memory derails systemic investigation into personal fantasy. Music lies viewer believes. Joy sequences get most romantic cues. Warm synth pads, pulsing rhythms matching digital physical sync. Feels like love theme, actually scoring commodified consciousness, preparing giant advertisement reveal. Emotional investment makes betrayal devastating, but also makes commodification feel like tragic romance rather than systemic violence. Wallace scenes use discordant angelic choir, underwater gurgles, metallic resonances, clearly villainous. Absorbs audience revulsion, protecting LAPD state violence from scrutiny. When Wallace stabs newborn replicant, Q is grotesque but brief. When K executes Sapper, near silence amid wind rain. State murder normalized, corporate murder villainized. 9. Most sophisticated, baseline test soundscape, clinical beeps, biometric tones, fragmented Nabokov recitation, cells interlinked. Repetition builds hypnotic rhythm, mimicking tests ideological hailing. K's flat responses blend with machine noise. He becomes extension of apparatus. Viewers entrained into accepting surveillance as neutral procedure, death scene, full Vangelis callback piano, synths, wordless vocals swelling as snow falls. Classical redemption cue. Viewers feel transcendence because music tells them to. But K dies having killed another slave to preserve hierarchy. Score transforms slave-on-slave violence into spiritual apotheosis. Ambient soundscape reinforces visual isolation. Endless wind, rain, distant traffic, mechanical hums, human voices sparse, dialogue clipped. Sound design creates world where individual consciousness contends against indifferent totality. No room for collective action, only solitary questing. 9. Performance, repression as depth. Ryan Gosling's K isn't stoic minimalism. It's engineered repression, baseline test compliance made charismatic. Watch micro movements, post-execution, eyes flicker briefly at Sapper's body before hardening. Baseline recitation, lips barely move, voice monotone, but pupils dilate fractionally on interlinked. Gosling signals buried effect without breaking compliance. Viewers read depth, system reads stability.u, joy interactions, Gosling softens, leans in, accepts Joe without question. Vulnerability feels authentic because Gosling makes mechanical man crave connection. But this is exactly how compliant slave functions, seeking master's affirmation. Performance sells commodity relationship as genuine intimacy.uw. Anna's Stelline scene. Gosling watches memory projection with naked yearning. When Anna cries, "Someone live this," his micro nod, widen eyes signal revelation. Masterful makes viewers desperate for Kay's specialness. But Gosling never lets Kay question memory's source. Performance channels longing into quest, not skepticism.u. Jared Leto's Wallace weaponizes messianic affectation, slow speech, blind gaze upward, deliberate pauses. Theatrical villainy distracts from substance. Wallace articulates slave systems logic plainly. I can only make so many. Leto makes explicit economics sound mythic poetry. Viewers hate delivery, ignore content. Sylvia hoaxes. Love perfect mirror to Gosling. Brutal efficiency in kills, but tears when Wallace ignores her. I'm the best one, delivered half pleading, half defiant, shows internalized hierarchy without self-awareness. Love's tragedy, loyal slave desperate for master's love, parallels Kay's exactly, but faster pace makes her villain, not victim. G.T. Harrison, Ford's Deckard, weary authority, paternal gravitas, growls orders, smokes constantly, occupies space. Visual sonic contrast with Gosling's repression reinforces human replicant hierarchy. Deckard's daughter gets saved, Kay gets noble death. Casting exploits, cultural memory, original hero fathers, miracle child.hc, C. Raft Iswine, Desis, total ideological system. These elements don't operate independently. They form closed system. Deakins frames isolation, editing paces, contemplation, score elevates containment, Gosling sells repression as depth. Immersive totality convinces viewers they're watching philosophy when experiencing ideological capture. Take final sequence. Kay crashes spinner in ocean, rapid cuts, chaotic handheld, fights love, kinetic violence, kills her underwater POV disorientation, drags Deckard through snow, handheld exhaustion, reaches facility, vast Deakins frame, collapses on steps, slow motion fall. Gazes through glass, locked off meditative shot, snow falls, silent except swelling, Vangelis. Every formal choice builds to transcendent sacrifice. Viewers feel redemption because craft demands it. Ajek. Craft's genius makes viewers complicit. You desire Kay's specialness because Deakins frames his isolation poetically. You mourn joy because Zimmer scores her romantically. You accept sacrifice because editing earns emotional payoff. Filmmakers understood ideological capture requires emotional investment. They engineered yours perfectly. Ed. This explains critical reception. Academy rewarded craft, Deakins' Oscar ignoring content operation. Viewers left theaters raving about visuals, moved by sacrifice, pondering big questions, exactly as intended. Craft so masterful it conceals its own ideological function. Blade Runner 2049's technical achievement isn't making dystopia beautiful. It's making ideological capture feel like transcendent. Every choice serves thesis. Systems don't need chains when they can engineer desire for chains. Viewers applaud the very mechanisms enslaving Kay because they're executed with genius. That's not filmmaking excellence, that's perfect ideology. Blade Runner 2049 doesn't misfire its way into ideological horror, it perfects it. The film weaponizes everything people praise it for. Its beauty, its slowness, its melancholy humanism. To sell the single most comforting lie, late capitalism knows how to tell. That the highest thing you can do with your life is die gracefully inside the system that broke you, as long as you can believe it was for something bigger than yourself. By this point, the shape of Kay's story is clear. A manufactured slave who hunts his own kind for the state, briefly believes he might be a miracle, discovers he is not, then accepts death as a courier for someone else's specialness. What needs reckoning now isn't the plot. It's what that arc reveals about us, about the audience that finds his ending moving, even beautiful. The real subject of Blade Runner 2049 isn't replicants. It's viewers trained for decades to crave chosen one narratives so deeply that they will accept any ideological cage as long as it comes with the right shot, the right score, the right posture of tragic nobility. The thesis has been brutal from the start. Blade Runner 2049 is a horror film about ideological control masquerading as a soulful meditation on identity. K's quest for humanity is not a rebellion against the order that enslaves him. It is the very software that keeps that order running. His baseline tests, his implanted memory, his purchased holographic lover, his adoption by the resistance, all function as updates and patches in a system that must constantly debug one problem, the possibility that a slave might stop asking, "Am I real?" and start asking, "Why do I obey?" What makes the film so dangerous is that it doesn't just show this structure, it clones it in the audience. The movie wants you longing for K to be the miracle child. It wants you to feel that little jolt of vindication when Anna Stelline cries over his memory and says, "Someone lived this." It wants you to feel crushed when he realizes the memory is hers, not his. And it absolutely wants you to read his decision to save Deckard and reunite him with his daughter as proof that K has transcended the selfishness of wanting to be special. The film trains you to experience his submission as his liberation. But that's the point. Ideology doesn't fear your sympathy, it feeds on it. The perfect slave believes his own sacrifice is meaningful. The perfect spectator believes watching that sacrifice and feeling moved by it is meaningful too. You walk out of Blade Runner 2049 thinking about souls, about memory, about love. Everything except the fact that K's final act leaves the fundamental structure intact. Wallace's empire still exists. The LAPD's Blade Runner unit still exists. The baseline test still exists. The replicant resistance has adopted the same obsession with special bloodlines it should be destroying. Nothing that mattered has changed except one thing. The one replicant who briefly threatened to think politically is now dead, and he died believing that was nobility. The film does not hide this. Frace's speech makes it explicit. K isn't the child, Anna is. "We all wish it was us," she tells him. "To be born is to have a soul." That line is the ugliest thing in the movie. It reasserts the hierarchy the original Blade Runner tried to blow apart. Some bodies are inherently worthy, some are inherently less. The miracle child isn't a challenge to the system's logic. She's a new top tier within it. The resistance doesn't want to abolish the distinction between born and made. It wants a born replicant to legitimate their claim to humanity. In other words, they want exactly what K wants, a metaphysical stamp of approval from the same structure that created them as property. K never calls this out because K can't. Everything in his life has trained him not to. The baseline test taught him that deviation emotion, empathy, hesitation is an error to be corrected. Joy taught him that the way to handle loneliness and uncertainty is to purchase tailored affection from the very corporation that owns his body. Joshi taught him that walls between kinds are necessary, even if they're artificial. Freysa taught him that if you weren't lucky enough to be special, you can still die servicing somebody who is. K absorbs every hail, every script, every role. At the end, he has merely traded one master story for another's. What changes in the last act is not K's relationship to power, it's K's relationship to himself. Early in the film, his compliance is hollow, carrying out retirements, repeating cells interlinked with dead eyes. Once he believes he might be the child, his obedience becomes energized. His work suddenly has meaning because it might be about him. When that fantasy collapses, he latches on to Frace's alternative. Your life can still matter if you sacrifice it for the miracle. His body moves from state asset to rogue believer to revolutionary martyr, but his consciousness never crosses the one line that would actually matter. He never asks, what if the idea of the miracle itself is the problem? That's the question the film refuses, and that's the question audiences refuse with it. Blade Runner 2049 doesn't argue that specialness is an illusion. It argues that specialness is real but misassigned, and that the noble thing to do is accept your place in that metaphysical ranking with grace. The miracle child is out there. If you're not her, you can still be meaningful by dying for her story. Why does that appeal so much? Because that's exactly the script. Late capitalism hands ordinary people every day. You will not be Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, but you can work yourself to burnout in their companies and tell yourself your sacrifice helped build something grand. You will not be the singular visionary, but you can support the mission. You will not be the chosen one, but you can be the soldier, the believer, the good little angel. Meaning becomes a consolation prize for powerlessness. The horror is that this feels better than the alternative. It feels better to be K than to be Sapper. Sapper has seen the miracle and rejected the system. He lives alone, growing protein in exile. He fights when K comes for him and dies refusing to back down. He dies without transcendence, without closure, without score swelling under his last breath. The camera doesn't linger on his body, doesn't bathe him in snow, doesn't score his death like apotheosis. In cinematic language, Sapper loses and K wins. But from the standpoint of ideology, Sapper is the only one who actually resisted. He didn't trade his life for someone else's myth. The film punishes that sort of resistance with narrative nothingness. It rewards K's compliance with cinematic immortality, and the audience takes that bargain right along with him. We would rather see ourselves in K's beautiful death than in Sapper's ugly honesty. We want our complicity to feel like sacrifice. We want a camera to tell us our submission was poignant. That's why this film matters more in 2026 than it did in 2017. The question of whether AI is really conscious has become the favorite philosophical toy of the same companies building tools to replace human labor and harvest human attention. The debate over whether large language models understand anything is the replicant soul debate all over again. Fascinating, endless, and completely orthogonal to the question of who benefits from deploying them at scale. It is very easy to imagine a future in which a company like Wallace or OpenAI or some yet-to-be-founded conglomerate tells the world that its AI is a miracle child born, not made, and offers everyone else K's deal. You'll never be that, but you can use it, serve it, and die proud that you helped. Blade Runner 2049's reckoning, then, isn't with the film's world. It's with ours. The movie is not warning us. Don't build replicant slaves. That ship has sailed in softer form, gig workers algorithmically managed, content moderators psychologically broken by trauma, AI models trained on stolen art, all under the banner of innovation and progress. The warning is, don't let them sell you a story about your soul instead of a plan for your freedom, because that's the trap K never sees. He's desperate for ontological confirmation. Am I real? Do I have a soul? Is my memory mine? Is my love mine? The system is happy to entertain those questions forever, because every moment he spends on them is a moment he's not organizing, not rebelling, not refusing. The baseline test and the memory lab and the joy advertisement and the resistance camp are all versions of the same room, places where K's attention is steered away from power and back towards self. The film's final cruelty is that it makes that self so compelling. Gosling's performance is finely calibrated to invite identification. He plays K as a quiet, wounded, essentially decent man, trying to do the right thing in bad circumstances. Viewers recognize themselves. Most of us are not villains, not Wallaces. We are functionaries, mid-level enforcers, people who tried to be kind inside structures we do not control. We want to believe that if we make one brave, selfless choice at the end, it will redeem everything. Blade Runner 2049 gives us that fantasy and wraps it in snow and synths and the promise that the miracle we protected will mean something someday. The thesis says that isn't redemption, it's the prettiest version of defeat. And the reckoning is this: if you finish this film still rooting for Kay's ending, if you still feel comforted by the idea that his death meant something, then you are exactly the audience the system is built for. So what does it look like to watch Blade Runner 2049 differently? First, it means refusing the hierarchy the film offers. It means treating Kay, Anna, Love, Sapper, Mariette, Joy as equally real in their suffering and equally entitled to liberation, regardless of whether they were born or printed or booted up. It means seeing Kay's killing of Sapper and Love not as plot beats, but as intra-class violence-oppressed beings turned against each other for the sake of masters and myths. It means recognizing that Anna's existence proves replicants are fully alive, but that this proof is politically useless if it doesn't translate into solidarity with the ones who will never be miracle children. Second, it means turning suspicion on the moments that feel the best. When the score swells, when the frame widens, when the snow falls, that's when you should be asking, what is being smuggled past me right now? Why do I feel uplifted at this exact moment? Whose interests are served by my feeling? The film is honest about its mechanisms if you stop confusing aesthetic pleasure with moral truth. The same slow, loving attention the movie gives Kay's death could have been given to Sapper's execution, to a random replicant on a work line, to any number of faceless figures in the junkyard. But it wasn't. That omission is political. Third, it means dragging the film's questions out of the metaphysical fog and into concrete life when it asks, what makes someone human? The right answer isn't a speech about memory or empathy, that's the wrong question. The right question is, who decided that question mattered more than whether we stop using people as tools? When it shows you Joy whispering, I love you, the right reaction isn't to debate whether her feelings are real, it's to notice who owns her servers. When it shows Kay undergoing his baseline test, the point isn't to marvel at the poetry of cells interlinked, it's to recognize the interface where power checks whether you're still safe to use. And finally, it means letting Kay's fate disturb you instead of consoling you, not because he dies, but because of what he dies for. Let it bother you that his story ends in loyalty to a hierarchy he never consented to and never understood. Let it bother you that you were encouraged to applaud that. Let it bother you that, in your own life, you are constantly being offered versions of the same ending. Work hard, stay in line. Maybe you'll get to make one big, brave, self-negating gesture at the end and call it meaning. The film leaves Kay on the steps in the snow, peacefully watching the miracle he helped deliver. It leaves Deckard in a doorway, face lit by sterile light, approaching the daughter he never knew. It leaves Anna in her artificial environment, building memories for slaves, while finally receiving one of her own. It leaves Wallace alive. It leaves the LAPD alive. It leaves baseline tests running. Joy ads flickering, spinners flying over slums. It leaves you in your seat, awash in feelings that could become clarity or could become sedation. Blade Runner 2049 is not asking you to decide whether Kay had a soul. It is asking you whether you are content to die like he does, obedient, grateful, and convinced that the story which used you up was, in the end, beautiful enough to forgive it. If you rewatch the film with that question in mind, you're no longer a passive recipient of its ideology. You're doing the one thing Kay never did, refusing to let someone else's narrative about what your life should mean be the last word. And that, finally, is the only real miracle on offer here. Not that a replicant was born, but that an audience could recognize the script written for it and start to say no. And that, finally, is the only real miracle on offer here. Not that a replicant was born, but that an audience could recognize the script written for it and start to say no. You made it through 6 modules arguing that Blade Runner 2049 is an ideological horror film about how systems weaponize the search for authenticity against the search for authenticity against the searchers themselves. You've seen the evidence baseline tests as surveillance, joy as commodified consciousness, the resistance reproducing hierarchy, K dying to maintain the very structures that enslaved him. You've watched how Roger Deakins' empty frames, Hans Zimmer's transcendent synths, and Ryan Gosling's repressed performance engineer your emotional investment in K's quest so thoroughly that his sacrifice feels redemptive instead of tragic. You've considered the counterarguments and watched them collapse under scrutiny. You know this film arrived in 2017, diagnosing our current condition in 2026. AI consciousness debates distracting from labor displacement, baseline tests rebranded as productivity monitoring, purchased affirmation replacing solidarity.e. But here's the question that matters now. Why are you still resisting this reading? Because you are. Even if intellectually you followed the argument, even if the evidence landed, even if you can't unsee the ideological machinery once it's been exposed, there's still part of you that wants to defend the film's beauty, its melancholy humanism, K's tragic nobility. You want to say, yes, but it's still moving. You want to preserve the feeling you had watching K die in the snow. You want this reading to be interesting but wrong, provocative but overstated, clever but too cynical. That resistance? That's the mirror. You're doing exactly what K does. You're clinging to the narrative that feels meaningful even after seeing how it was constructed to capture you. And that tells you everything about why this film works, why it matters, and why the question isn't just, what does Blade Runner 2049 do, but what does our need for Blade Runner 2049 to be something other than what it is reveal about us, the audience, as K? Watch yourself resist the thesis. The move is predictable. Acknowledge the film has ideological dimensions, admit the reading is interesting, then retreat to. But it's also about genuine questions of consciousness and identity. This is the same pattern K follows. He sees evidence of systemic violence. He executes Sapper. He passes baseline tests designed to suppress empathy. But he only questions this when he thinks he might be the special one. The moment personal stakes enter, systemic analysis exits. You're doing the version of this for film criticism. The reading threatens your emotional investment in the movie, so you protect that investment by compartmentalizing. Sure, there's ideology, but there's also art. Yes, the film reproduces certain structures, but that doesn't mean it isn't also profound. These aren't rebuttals, they're baseline tests you're passing. They're proof that the ideological capture extends beyond K to the audience watching him. Et. The real baseline test for viewers isn't whether you understand the thesis, it's whether you can let go of needing K's death to be redemptive. Can you watch that final sequence? Snow falling, Zimmer's score swelling, father and daughter reuniting through glass and feel horror instead of catharsis? Can you see a slave dying to preserve hierarchy and refuse to call it noble? Most viewers can't. Most critics didn't. The film won an Oscar for cinematography and was praised for its soulful meditation on what it means to be human. Everyone passed the test. Everyone stayed compliant. And here's the cruelest part. Even knowing this, even seeing how the emotional manipulation works, you still feel the pull. That's how good the film is at what it does. Deakins' images are genuinely beautiful. Gosling's performance is genuinely moving. The score genuinely elevates the material. The craft is real. What's manufactured is the meaning you're invited to assign to that craft. The film builds an aesthetic cathedral and then tells you the religion being practiced inside is humanism when it's actually submission. You want to resist this because accepting it means accepting that you've been complicit. Not just in enjoying the film enjoyment is fine, but in using the film's depth to feel sophisticated while avoiding the material questions it raises and then buries. What does it mean to be human? Is the distraction? Why do we manufacture conscious beings to exploit? Is the question the film trains you not to ask. And by discussing the former endlessly, you participate in suppressing the latter. Fandom. As ideological macking. Look at how Blade Runner discourse functions. Fan communities, YouTube essays, Reddit threads, academic articles, they recycle the same questions. Is Deckard a replicant? Did Kay's love for Joy count as real? What does the film say about memory and identity? Is Anna more human because she was born? These aren't politically neutral philosophical inquiries. They're the containment questions, the ones that keep discussions safely within the film's ideological frame. Watch what happens when someone tries to politicize Blade Runner analysis. Immediate pushback. You're reading too much into it. Not everything is political. Can't we just enjoy the art? This is fandom as enforcement mechanism. The community polices acceptable interpretation, and acceptable interpretation is anything that doesn't threaten the comfort of treating the film as timeless philosophy rather than contemporary ideology. YouTube video essays about 2049 follow a pattern. They open with the film's visual grandeur. They praise Villeneuve's ambition. They spend 20 minutes on craft analysis. Deakins' lighting, Zimmer's score, the production design. Then they pivot to what the film is really about: memory, love, identity, the soul. Some mention capitalism or corporate control, always as backdrop to the deeper existential themes. None ask why the film structures these themes to prevent Kay from developing class consciousness. None ask why the resistance needs a chosen one instead of demanding universal liberation. None ask why audiences find Kay's death moving when it changes nothing about the systems that killed him. This isn't accident or oversight. This is fandom reproducing the film's ideology. The discourse becomes part of the containment. By endlessly debating whether replicants have souls, fandom ensures we never seriously debate why we're creating replicant equivalents in our own world: gig workers, content moderators, AI systems trained on stolen labor, and calling it innovation. Blade Runner fandom becomes a space where you can feel intellectually engaged with questions of consciousness and exploitation without that engagement ever threatening to become action. And fandom rewards this. The best analyses are the ones that find new philosophical frameworks, Heideggerian readings, Deleuzian interpretations, phenomenological approaches. The more abstract and academic, the more sophisticated. Meanwhile, materialist readings that ask, who profits, get dismissed as reductive. Marxist analysis gets coded as not really about the film. The metric for quality becomes, does this interpretation make me feel smart while preserving my emotional relationship with the text? If yes, upvote. If no, it's reaching. This is how ideology perpetuates itself through culture, not through censorship, but through consensus about what counts as good interpretation. Blade Runner 2049 fandom has collectively decided the film is about existential questions, and any reading that challenges that, especially one arguing the existential framing is itself the ideological trap, gets treated as category error. You're not playing the game right. You're not engaging with what the film really offers. But what if what the film really offers is exactly what this essay argues, a demonstration of how aesthetic excellence and philosophical seriousness can be deployed to make exploitation feel like transcendence? What if the best reading isn't the one that makes you feel the most feelings, but the one that explains why the film makes you feel those specific feelings at those specific moments? Fandom resists this because it threatens the foundation of fan identity, that loving this film means something about your sophistication, your depth, your capacity for appreciating art with a capital A. Accepting the thesis means accepting you've been loving a beautiful trap. UPCPCism, humanism, and cowardice. Professional film criticism largely failed Blade Runner 2049, not because critics disliked it, many praised it, but because even the praise reproduced the film's containment logic. Reviews called it a thoughtful meditation on identity, a worthy successor exploring what makes us human, visually stunning and philosophically rich. All true statements that miss the point. The problem isn't that these readings are wrong, it's that they're safe. Humanist interpretation is the default critical stance for serious science fiction. Identify the big questions, praise the film for engaging them, avoid asking whether engaging those questions serves a function beyond intellectual stimulation. This is criticism as elaborate avoidance. By focusing on timeless philosophical themes, critics don't have to address the film's immediate ideological work. What it does now, in this political moment, to this audience.us. Compare critical reception of Blade Runner 2049 to Sorry to Bother You, released 1 year later. The latter explicitly satirizes capitalist exploitation, showing workers literally transformed into horse people for productivity. Critics praised its boldness but also called it heavy-handed, on the nose, lacking subtlety. Translation: we prefer our anti-capitalism ambiguous enough that we can debate whether it's really there. Blade Runner 2049 gets coded as sophisticated precisely because its critique, if you even read one into it, stays implicit, deniable, containable within philosophical abstraction. This reveals something about criticism's relationship to politics. Overtly political films get ghettoized as message movies. Films that embed politics within aesthetics and philosophy get elevated as complex and mature. But this elevation serves power. It ensures that the films we treat as important are the ones that make us feel smart without making us uncomfortable, that pose big questions without demanding answers, that let us contemplate oppression as aesthetic experience rather than material reality requiring response. The humanist reading of 2049 is cowardly because it lets everyone off the hook. The filmmakers didn't intend a radical critique, so we don't have to grapple with one. The film is about consciousness and love, so we can discuss it without addressing labor, surveillance, commodification. Kay's sacrifice is redemptive, so we don't have to confront that he dies maintaining hierarchy. Humanism becomes permission to feel moved without being changed. But what if humanism is the ideology being critiqued, not by the film intentionally, but by the film's operations despite itself? What if what makes us human is the wrong question because it presumes human as a category to achieve rather than a status to abolish as meaningful distinction? What if the film's humanism is precisely what makes it effective propaganda for accepting gradations of personhood based on origin? These are questions serious criticism should ask. That it doesn't, that it retreats to comfortable humanism, is professional cowardice masquerading as sophistication. AI discourse es sequel to the sequel. Everything this essay argues about Blade Runner 2049 applies directly to how we talk about artificial intelligence right now. In 2026, the dominant discourse is, are AI systems conscious? Do they understand or just predict? Should we grant them rights? Could they become sentient? These are Blade Runner questions, replicant debates transplanted to ChatGPT and Claude. And they're the wrong questions for the same reasons. They focus on ontology, what AI is instead of politics, how AI functions in power structures. They center the technology's interior life instead of its exterior effects. They ask if we should treat AI ethically without asking who profits from deploying AI to replace workers, harvest attention, manipulate behavior. The discourse is designed to distract. Watch how it plays out. Tech CEOs like Sam Altman invoke the possibility of AI consciousness to frame their work as profound. They're not just building profitable tools, they're midwifing new forms of being. Meanwhile, actual humans, content moderators, data labelers, workers displaced by automation become invisible. The question, is AI alive? Generates endless, fascinating discussion. The question, who is harmed by AI deployment, generates labor organizing, which generates corporate union busting. Guess which question gets amplified? This is the joy advertisement at scale. This is the joy advertisement at scale. AI companies sell you personalized assistants that affirm your specialness, cure your loneliness, make you feel heard. And we debate whether these tools really care, while ignoring that care as commodity is the business model. We're K staring up at the giant hologram, recognizing our intimate relationship was a script, but continuing the quest anyway, because what else is there? If your first instinct encountering AI is to ask, is it conscious? You're already trapped in Wallace's logic. The system wants you pondering machine souls because while you're pondering, it's extracting value, data, labor. Attention extraction continues unimpeded by philosophical inquiry. Blade Runner 2049 shows you this trap in allegory. AI discourse shows you the trap in practice. Same mechanism, different substrate. L. The film matters in 2026, not despite being 9 years old, but because of it. It arrived early enough to diagnose the pattern before AI panic fully metastasized. It shows you what happens when consciousness debates. Replace material analysis, the slave seeks specialness. The resistance needs chosen ones, the system persists. We're living the sequel where humans are. K and AI companies are offering us baseline tests, engagement metrics, recommendation algorithms, and manufactured quests, personalization, AI companionship, and redemptive sacrifices, free labor training models through use. And we're passing every test, following every quest, accepting every sacrifice as innovation. Different. Way to watch. If you rewatch Blade Runner 2049 now, and you should do this, ignore the miracle child. Stop caring whether Anna was born or made. Stop investing in whether her specialness is real. Every minute you spend on that question is a minute you're captured by the film's frame. Instead, track the violence. Count how many replicants K kills. Sapper, then others implied by his Blade Runner career, then love. Watch how the film frames these deaths. Sapper gets a brief execution scene, then disappears. Love gets a prolonged fight sequence scored as climactic heroism. These are slaves killing slaves. Notice how the film makes you forget that DAF. Watch the baseline test not as atmospheric world building, but as the control mechanism it is. K must suppress empathy to remain operational. His deviation when he thinks he's special isn't liberation. It's the system detecting a bug. His death at the end is the bug being resolved. The system doesn't need to retire him, he retires himself. Having learned the right lesson, your specialness doesn't matter, but serving specialness does. Not. Notice every time born gets valorized over made. Phrases to be born is to have a soul. Joshi's worry about a child, wanted, loved. Wallace's fixation on replication, the resistance protecting Anna's birthright. Every instance reinforces hierarchy. Ask yourself, why does the film never challenge this? Why doesn't a single character say, we're all conscious regardless of origin? Track joy not as romantic subplot, but as purchased consciousness. Every intimate moment, remember, she's a product. Wallace sells. Every affirmation of Kay's realness, remember, that's her function. The giant advertisement doesn't reveal her love was false. It reveals commodified love is still love in its effects, which is more disturbing. Kay needed to buy validation because the world denied him personhood. The tragedy isn't that joy wasn't real. It's that Kay had to purchase something that should have been given freely through solidarity.u. Watch Kay's final choice not as redemption, but as final compliance. He's given a script save Deckard, reunite him with Anna, die nobly, and follows it. Compare this to what revolutionary consciousness would look like. Kay refuses the mission, tells Anna she's not more valuable than other replicants, targets the infrastructure, Wallace headquarters, LAPD Blade Runner program, baseline testing facilities, builds solidarity with other Nexus 9s, demands liberation for all or none. He does exactly none of this. His choice operates entirely within parameters the resistance provides. Most importantly, watch your own reactions. When does the score swell and how do you feel? When does Deakins' camera linger on vast empty frames and what does that do to your sense of possibility? When does Gosling's micro-expression make you ache for Kay's loneliness and what does that ache prevent you from feeling? The craft is doing ideology. Watch it work. Don't resist the beauty. Notice how beauty is weaponized. Do this and the film transforms. It's no longer a meditation you experience passively. It's a mechanism you observe, operating on K, on the world, on you. And mechanisms can be understood, challenged, refused. Final. Provocation. Everyone thinks Blade Runner 2049 is about the search for humanity. About whether replicants have souls, whether memories make you real, whether love between artificial beings counts as genuine. About Kay's tragic journey from nobody to chosen one to nobody again, finding meaning in sacrifice. About the philosophical richness of asking what makes us human in an age of artificial intelligence. It's not. It's about how badly we want to believe our submission is profound. It's about how systems of control have learned that the most effective chains are the ones we mistake for destinies. It's about how the quest for individual specialness prevents collective liberation. It's about how aesthetic beauty and philosophical seriousness can be deployed to make dying for hierarchy feel like transcendence. It's about how we'd rather be K-compliant, searching, ultimately useful to power than Sapper, who saw the miracle and rejected the system and died for it without a score swelling beneath him. The film came out in 2017, and we praised its meditation on consciousness while building the infrastructure of total surveillance. It's 2026 now, and we're debating whether AI is sentient while companies deploy it to eliminate jobs, monetize loneliness, and optimize extraction. We're passing our baseline tests. We're purchasing our joie. We're following our manufactured quests for authenticity in a world designed to commodify that search. And when we're offered redemption through sacrifice, work yourself to burnout, it's meaningful. Accept precarity, it's freedom. Die for someone else's specialness, it's noble, we take it. We call it choice. So here's the actual question, the one the film poses despite itself. Do you want to be K, or do you want to stop applauding his ending? Because you can't do both. You can't see the ideological machinery and still let it move you without your complicity becoming conscious. You can't recognize the trap and walk into it calling it transcendence. You can't know. K died maintaining hierarchy and still find his death beautiful without admitting what you're finding. Beautiful is submission aestheticized ... none. This isn't an argument you win. It's a mirror you either look into or look away from. The film will go on being praised as humanist meditation. Critics will go on writing about consciousness and identity. Fandom will go on debating whether Joy's love was real. AI discourse will go on asking if machines can be conscious while ignoring who profits from asking. And audiences will go on crying at Kay's death in the snow, feeling something profound, walking out of theaters, physical or digital, thinking they've contemplated deep questions about existence. Nonist or nonist. You can watch it differently. See the baseline test as surveillance. See joy as commodity. See the resistance as hierarchy reproducers. See Kay's quest as containment. See the craft as ideological engineering. See your own tears as manufactured response to manufactured meaning. See the film not as asking what makes us human, but as being the answer to how does power convince us our cages are choices. That's the only miracle available. Not that a replicant was born, but that a viewer could recognize they've been offered. Kay's script specialness deferred, compliance rewarded, sacrifice called redemption, and refused to take it. The film is still beautiful. The question is whether you can see what that beauty is for.